Hey my watchers, welcome. Today we are gonna see. What if Harry Potter summoned the god of butlers? Harry Potter is sold to a cult at the age of 10. By Vernon, who didn't want a Harry who knew magic in his home. Beaten and humiliated, Harry thirsts for revenge and attracts a certain demon's attention. Reincarnation FIC. Editing in process. Sebastian still killed Ashangela. Seal is 15 when he died and Elizabeth was pregnant. In that era it was popular for women to get married at a young age since people had a shorter lifespan. Season 2 happened before the Season 1 finale and Seal did not become a demon. So he did meet Aloys and Claude. Also Earl is more prestigious than Lord since Lord is usually used for barons. And my grace for dukes. But Lord can be used for earls. I researched titles since it probably means a lot on the wizarding world. So basically all of the wizarding families are barons since they have done no services to the queen. Harry will be OC as he does summon Sebastian. Don't read. What God forsakes the devil takes unknown. Harry Potter had had enough. He had tried to be a good boy, tried to be forgiving, kind, compassionate, understanding, all those things adults desire children to be. But he wanted revenge. His lovely uncle had sold him to a cult. He now sat oh so prettily on a sacrificial altar. He had prayed to his dead parents, to God for anyone to come save him. He had never been rude to anyone, had never hurt anyone. He had been told countless times over that he was a freak. But he also heard that God didn't discriminate. So young Harry came to the realization of, there was no God, for surely he would have been rescued. White feathers cascaded around the boy and he locked eyes with the birds. Those red eyes had widened just a fraction when Harry had made eye contact. The black bird shook its head imperceptibly and opened its beak. Harry was surprised to hear the bird speak, as he had fully expected it to croak. Think carefully. Should you reject the faith, even this once the gates of paradise will forever be out of your reach. I am demon, and I will ask again, do you wish to form a contract? The bird asked. Ido. Now stop asking all of these tiresome questions. Do we have a deal or not? Harry asked. The bird's eyes gleamed in amusement and the white downy feathers rose into the air, turning charcoal black, obscuring Harry's view of a bird. In the bird's place was now a man with raven black hair, red eyes the color of blood, and a pale, almost ghost-like complexion. To seal the contract, all you have to do is state your terms and give me a name. The demon said, you have to help me get revenge on those who've caused this to happen to me. Do not lie or betray me, and in return you can have my soul. Harry said, and for the name? The demon asked, perhaps something from a history text. Something ironic as well, maybe from the Inquisition. After all, these people are supposedly conducting witchcraft. There was one that caught my eye and it has stuck for some odd reason. I think I'll call you Sebastian Michaelis. Harry decided, noting that the eyes widened ever so slightly more, and asked, why are you looking at me like that? You look at me as if I were a ghost. Perhaps I have young master, Sebastian murmured, as the feathers swirled around them even faster and froze suddenly in midair before dropping to the dirty floor of the church. What are your orders, young lord? Kill them. Kill them all. Harry said hoarsely, his eyes gleaming with hatred. My pleasure, Sebastian said before grabbing the leader's hand that was holding the knife. The corners of his lips upturned as he remembered doing something so similar a long time ago. He broke the man's neck and flung the dagger the leader had been wielding at another member of the cult, not even looking to see if they were dead as he quickly slaughtered the rest. Now, young master, shall we complete the contract? Sebastian asked, finishing his first task before looking at the boy for the first time since entering the human world. He looked different, not at all like the boy he had seen in his dimension. Yes, Harry replied, wrapping the cloth that had been covering him around his waist. You have a glamour and other spells on you. I need to take them off in order to place the Faustian contract. Sebastian said, realizing that his new master was a wizard. Go ahead. But tell me what spells were on me after. Harry said, yes, young master. Sebastian said before placing the palm of his hand on the boy's right eye. He gave a slight gasp. The boy, he was a Horcrux. Someone else had placed a shard of their soul in his young master. Not only that, but they bound his magic and there were tracking and compulsion charms on him. Of course the compulsion had broken during the boys' stay, but the others were still there. Sebastian effortlessly broke the power block and tracking magic. The glamour was slightly more difficult but still easily broken. But the soul shard would be slightly difficult but well worth it. The soul shard was full of corruption, hate, desperation, and sorrow. No satisfaction, but dark chocolate was delicious in small amounts. Sebastian thought to himself, feeling the boy collapse as he broke the magic block. Sebastian placed his mouth over his young master's and breathed in lightly, sucking just enough to breathe in the small shard. Hi. So a new day, a new plot bunny. Those brutal savages, my plot bunnies look like bitter rabbit except they have fangs and are cannibals. Also point out errors. I know they haven't finished the Faustian contract yet, but Harry just had the Horcrux and other spells removed. To explain the whole glamour thing. You hear about these a lot in Harry Potter, but they usually go out of their way to make them look different. But really change a few genes and well you could look nothing like you had before. So I thought to myself, what if Lily was descended from Seal and Elizabeth? After all, Elizabeth did have green eyes and Seal's aunt had red hair. So the genes are there. Also, in rare cases, children can inherit traits that skip a few generations even if your parents and grandparents don't have them. Hence Harry looks like Seal. You got that right? I was thinking of altering Harry's name to Hadrian Seal Phantomive Potter or Seal Hadrian James Phantomive Potter. Because the story is about Seal being reincarnated into his descendant Harry Potter, who has his own revenge list. I also figured he would get flashbacks after receiving the Phantom Hive head ring. I personally prefer the second, just without James as a middle name, but hey, you're the reviewers. A few other characters might appear as undercover reapers or reincarnated. It is not titles that honor men but men that honor titles. Niccolò Machiavelli. What was the license plate of the car that hit me? Harry asked, opening his eyes blearily. Ah, you're awake, young master. Good, I have breakfast ready for you, and then we can complete the contract with a Faustian seal. Sebastian said, walking in with a cart of food. Does it matter where I get the mark? Harry asked curiously. The more visible the mark, the stronger the contract, so should you be in danger, it would be easier to track you if it was on your eye than your shoulder. Now scone with jam? A baguette? Or a muffin? Sebastian replied while uncovering the breakfast dishes. Interesting, and a scone. Harry said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Good choice, my lord. Where would you prefer the contract mark? Sebastian asked while neatly buttering the scone with strawberry jam. Tea, my lord? We have Earl Grey, green, black, and jasmine. Sebastian asked. No tea, I'd rather just receive the contract mark now that I've finished. Best to get it over with, since there's probably a lot of things to do. Harry sighed. I'll be placing the mark on your right eye. After I do this, you won't need glasses anymore, if you needed them at all. Sebastian said, placing his palm over Harry's right eye and placed the seal. Harry gave a cry of pain before his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Sebastian adjusted Harry to a more comfortable position and pulled the covers up to Harry's chin, with soft eyes. Young master shouldn't be waking up for a while, and there's so much to do. Sebastian said to himself before flipping open the pocket watch he had kept from when he had served Seal. Noon, I should look for some clothing for young master, and the Phantom Hive ring should be around here somewhere. Sebastian strode towards the basement to see if Seal's old clothing had become unusable or not. Surprisingly, a few outfits were still intact, although they smelt terribly, but there was no mold or moth holes. A good washing and it would be perfect even if it was outdated in style. As Sebastian lifted the clothing out of the chest, he saw his old butler uniform folded neatly in the bottom and a small leather pouch. Curious, Sebastian opened the pouch and shook the contents into his hand. Resting in his palm was the Phantom Hive family ring and the pin that was traditionally worn by the head butler. He would give these to young master when he woke up. Sebastian then set about cleaning the old manor. It was much easier without Finny, Mirren and Bardroy destroying something every few minutes, but the silence was eerie. Even to him, if he was lucky, Grell wouldn't be able to find them. After finishing his cleanup, Sebastian set about making dinner, knowing his young master would be hungry, and what kind of butler would he be if he didn't have dinner ready? Harry lazily opened his eyes, taking in his surroundings. The room was incredibly clean and the curtains, while faded, were still elegant looking. Slowly he sat up and gave a content sigh. Damn, that bed was comfy. Much better than anything he had slept on before. Harry had been surprised when they had arrived at the Phantom Hive Manor, and even more surprised when he looked into a mirror. The face that looked back at him appeared more like Seal Phantomives than Lily and James Potter. Harry jumped in surprise when he heard the bedroom door open. "Good evening, young master. It's time for dinner," Sebastian said, walking in with Seal's old suit folded over his arm. Resting the green outfit on the edge of the large bed, Sebastian unbuttoned Harry's shirt and redressed him methodically. "You don't have to do that. I know how to dress myself," Harry said quietly, as Sebastian tied the ribbon around his neck into a bow. "I am merely fulfilling my duties as your butler, young master," Sebastian replied calmly as he finished tying the bow with one last tug. "What do you mean by butler?" Harry asked curiously. "In my previous contract I was undercover as a butler. My master at the time, Seal Phantom Hive, was 10 and his whole life had gone up in flames. Well, all but Tanaka and family friends. Tanaka, however, had been stabbed and was elderly. He was unable to fulfill his duties as the Phantom Hive head butler, seeing as his energy levels had dropped incredibly. So the job went to me," Sebastian explained, guiding Harry towards the dining room. "What was the rest of the staff like?" Harry questioned. "I don't know what the young master prefers, so I made several dishes," Sebastian said, steering the gaping boy to the family head seat. "I can't eat all of this," Harry protested weakly. "Young master only needs a bite of each, then we'll move on to dessert," Sebastian said, placing bite-sized pieces of everything on Harry's plate. "But it's such a waste," Harry said, staring at the mountain of food. "I will give it to the hungry, if that would satisfy young master. This will also be a part of your etiquette lessons," Sebastian said, tying a cloth around Harry's neck. "But I'm not a lord. I'm just Harry Potter," Harry said, really not wanting to learn etiquette. "Young master does not know his family history? We'll have to correct that mistake tomorrow. Now this small fork is for salad, and this knife here is for steak. See the serration of the blade and how the ridges are much sharper," Sebastian asked, pointing out small details to show what each utensil was for. "Can't I just use one spoon, one fork, and one knife?" Harry asked, staring at the multiple pieces of cutlery lying before him. "No, should you go to a formal party before you fully understand and recognize what each utensil is for, the best course of action would be to work your way from the outside in," Sebastian sighed. "Young master, I believe it would be best for you to get up. We have a long day ahead of us. We must head off to Diagon Alley's bank right after breakfast." "Now scone, muffin, or baguette?" Sebastian asked, dressing the still half-asleep 10-year-old. "I like scones," Harry mumbled. "Of course you do, young master," Sebastian said, cutting and buttering pieces of scone. Harry mumbled as he ate the pieces of fresh-baked scone. "Tea, young master?" Sebastian asked. "Earl Grey," Harry replied, thinking of the only tea he remembered from yesterday's options. Harry sipped contentedly on his tea before asking, "Where is this? Diagon Alley?" "It's in the heart of London," Sebastian answered. "Okay then, let's head out. I've finished with the tea," Harry said, setting the empty cup down. "Of course, young master. It's a shame that horse-drawn carriages aren't used anymore. It was such a lovely way to travel. Unlike these times, what with everyone and everything rushing by you, not even saying a polite hello," Sebastian muttered before opening the passenger door to the black Ferrari for Harry. They drove to London in silence, and Harry stared blankly out the window. The outside world had lost its splendor. Harry no longer wished to stay outside for hours on end. He preferred the safety of the manor. Sebastian parked the car in front of a dingy old bar. The paint was peeling and the windows stained. It obviously needed a renovation. Leaky cauldron indeed. They walked swiftly through the bar, being stared at by the odd person, but they had exited the bar too soon for anything to happen. "Why are we standing in front of a brick wall in a dirty alley?" Harry asked dryly. "It's what's behind the dirty wall, young master," Sebastian said before tapping the bricks in a pattern. The bricks started moving and rotating until there was a brick archway leading to a shimmering street. The first thing Harry saw was a cauldron shop. A sign was propped up and read gold, silver, copper and pewter. Collapsible, self-styrable, self-timing. Harry was gently tugged on the arm by Sebastian, who said, "There will be plenty of time to look around, young master, but we should be getting to the bank, of course. Lead the way," Harry said before picking up the pace so he was walking beside Sebastian. When Sebastian led him to a tall, crooked, marble building that read Gringotts, Harry was slightly surprised but figured that it was the name of the bank. As they entered the crooked building, Harry wasn't surprised to see that it was richly decorated. But the sight of short little balding men with long skeletal fingers were working there was. Harry figured that he could question Sebastian about it later. When they approached the front desk, Sebastian handed a manila envelope with a red wax seal on it to the short man. "Yes, sir, now come this way, sirs," Griphook said, leading them into a back room that had 3 red and gold armchairs, a mahogany desk, a single piece of parchment, and a silver knife resting on top of the parchment. "Now, young lord, all you do is prick your finger and it will tell you your name, parents' name, grandparents, great-grandparents, inherited properties and titles," Griphook said before closing the door. Harry pricked his finger and let the drop of blood fall onto the parchment. The blood turned into spidery letters that read, "Name: Seal Hadrian Phantomive Potter. Father: James Charles Potter. Paternal grandfather: Harold Clarence Potter.
Paternal grand-moté, Calypso Rosemary Potter née Gris-en-Gras.
Paternal grandmother's mother: Persephone Anastasia Greengrass née Malfoy. Paternal grandmother's father: Daedalus Aries Greengrass. Paternal great-grandfather: Charles Alexander Potter. Paternal great-grandmother: Doria Estelle Potter née Black Mother. Lily Elizabeth Potter née Phantomhive. Maternal grandfather: Thomas Leo Phantomhive.
Maternal grand-moté, Alice Hélène Phantomive née Kingsleg. Maternal great-grand-faté, Ciel Vincent Phantomive.
Maternal great-grandmother: Elizabeth Rose Phantomhive née Midford. Maternal grandmother's father: Charles Nathaniel Kingsley. Maternal grandmother's mother: Helen Lila Kingsley née Briars. Inherited titles: Earl Phantomhive, Lord Potter, Lord Peveril. Inherited properties: Phantomhive Manor, Phantomhive England Home, Potter Manor. "So my name's not Harry, huh? Why'd they call me by my middle name instead of my first?" Harry asked, staring at the parchment. "Names have power, young master. As Earl Phantomhive you have more political power than the other lords, since your standing with the Queen is higher. You didn't inherit the Midford or Kingsley lordships, since Alice and Elizabeth were the youngest in their families. Malfoy, Greengrass and Black have lords already," Sebastian told him. "Essentially, yes, my lord. Being who you are, you have many enemies. Here you're known as their savior and a beacon of light. The ones most likely to be pulling the strings would be the ministry or the next most powerful figurehead. You can't have a rogue savior. Now can you?" Sebastian replied calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Let's show this to the goblins, then head back. Unless we need to do anything else before we leave," Harry said before standing up and walking through the door Sebastian had opened. "We having nothing else we need to accomplish, my lord. Although I would advise you to ask the goblins to show you your parents' will. You should also ask who your magical guardian is," Sebastian replied. "That would be a good idea," Harry said before walking over towards the head desk and handed the goblin the paper before saying, "I would also like to see my parents' will, and could you wouldn't happen to know who my magical guardian is by any chance?" "Yes, of course, young Earl. Your magical guardian is one Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore," the goblin replied before handing Harry a scroll, which according to this chart equates into air. Harry mentally calculated while staring at the conversion chart. This is just the rounded numbers. Sebastian's answer is the full conversion rate. It would be 260,999.13 pounds, young master, Sebastian said, watching Harry amusedly, as the young boy was scratching out the problem in ink with a quill. "I almost had it, see?" Harry pouted, showing 99.13 on the scrap of parchment. "I apologize, young master. I had also found the Phantomhive head's ring, on the night we completed our contract, along with the pin for the head butler." Sebastian set his eyes gleaming in amusement at the sight of his young master pouting. He handed the small pouch over to Harry and saw the child smile softly. "You should wear the pin, Sebastian. After all, you do know what you're doing." Harry said before slipping on the silver and sapphire ring. Sebastian, I feel sleepy. Harry mumbled before collapsing against the newly reappointed head butler. Oh, young Earl, what did you do to the ring? Reincarnation is supposed to be a fresh start, not a redo of life with full knowledge. Sebastian said with a shake of his head before picking the child up bridal style and walked out of the bank. Also, the Reapers will be introduced soon. I just want Harry to start regaining Seal's memories.
Die Alois trennt sie.
Seal said calmly. Please. I don't want to die. Please spare me, Seal.
Alois pleaded.
No, Seal. You've got it all wrong. You don't understand. You're being tricked by a demon. Believe me.
Alois pleaded.
A demon? Seal asked hesitantly. My family, they died along with the whole village in a fire. Stole them from me. Can't you see we're the same, you and me?
I promise I.
Won't bother you anymore. I'll apologize for everything, please, Seal. Please spare me. Please let me live.
Alois trennt sie begged gripping.
Seal's pant leg, blood and tears streaking his face. His blonde hair mused and his pale blue wide and red-rimmed. Seal gave a hysterical laugh, finally over, and to think he was pleading for his life. How utterly pathetic. Through your actions you have shamed me and my family, and you shall atone with your death. Seal growled before plunging the sword straight towards Alois's skull, tuning out the hopeless pleading, only to be stopped by Claude. Seal was furious to be stopped and struggled with the other demon butler before slapping him, leaving 3 bloody finger streaks on his cheek. Claude looked like he was about to murder Seal, but Sebastian said, Stop. Given the current circumstances, I see no need for this dance to carry on. Before gathering the fuming Seal and taking off, ignoring the slaps to the face his master was giving him. Young master, it's time to wake up, Sebastian said, shaking his current employer. Sebastian, you bastard. You didn't let me kill Alois Trancy. Seal shrieked before slapping the butler. Oh, I'm so sorry. Why did I do that? What's wrong with me? Seal gasped, staring at his hand in confusion. Sebastian looked at his new young master in amusement. Seal Phantomhive had done this all the time. This Seal, however, seemed to be of a different temperament. He was remembering, though. No worries, young master. Your great-grandfather did the same, albeit without remorse. But I slapped you. Over a dream of all things. Seal murmured, a memory, actually. I was unable to allow your great-grandfather, Seal Phantomhive, from killing his nemesis at the time, Alois Trancy. Had I not stopped him, I would have been unable to prevent Claude from killing him. Sebastian explained before undressing and redressing Seal. It's quite all right, and what kind of butler would I be if I didn't do this for my young master? Sebastian said. You never told me what spells had been placed on me. And I don't know. A butler who has a capable master.
Ciel snorted.
There was a glamour, as you know, a mind compulsion, a magic block, a tracer, and a foreign soul shard easily removed. Sebastian said before asking Seal about his breakfast preference. Earl Grey and a scone with strawberry jam.
Ciel en swerd.
Yes, young master. Also, there was a letter in the mail from the Queen. Sebastian said, handing Seal the scone and a cream-colored envelope. This jam is seedless? Brilliant. And a letter from the Queen. Seal asked, putting the scone down, and opened the envelope. Congratulations, Earl Phantomhive. I would like to thank your family for their services to the royal family in the past. I would like to offer you the position your ancestors had. Sincerely, Queen Elizabeth II. Harry mumbled, skipping over some of the letter. What was the position exactly? Harry asked, looking up from the letter. Is it expected of myself to accept? Or is it a polite way of saying this is obligatory? How did she find out so quickly anyways? Seal asked. It is expected of you, and as savior it's technically compulsory. It may give clues to your tormentors, seeing as how after I killed the cult I was still unable to take your soul. The goblins at Gringotts have to tell the royal family when any of the noble lines thought to have died out resurface. Sebastian answered, handing Seal the teacup. Your abusive relatives have moved. I'll be looking into their current location later. Joy, I guess I'll have to accept. But if it gets me answers, then I'm all for it. Also, I would like to become emancipated and find out more about how I came to be a savior. Seal said, taking a sip of his tea while pulling out paper, a quill and some ink before writing his acceptance letter. Seal stared at his butler with his jaw hanging. He shut his mouth with a click and choked out, "I have a harem with 100 women in it." His ring still pressed against the wax. Sebastian held in a snicker at his young lord's expression. He had choked on laughter when he first heard the rumor himself in the alley. The wizarding world was very excited that his young lord would be attending Hogwarts this year, and the rumors were flying. "Wait, Velas are woman, right?" Seal asked with a panicked look on his face.
Yes.
Seal stuttered, wondering what on earth a 10-year-old would do with a harem. "I'll get to it, my lord," Sebastian said before walking out of the room, taking the letter sans the ring with him. As soon as Sebastian left the room, he started giggling and covered his mouth with his hand to muffle the sound of his laughter. He walked to the manor's door and heard a knocking sound and opened the door to see William T. Spears standing in front of him. "Give me one good reason not to slam the door in your face," Sebastian said once he saw the dark-haired Shinigami. "I'm currently working for the Queen as her butler. She sent me to acquire your response. Why are you here, demon?" "I expected to be greeted by a 10-year-old boy," William said. "We're in a contract," Sebastian said pleasantly. "You disgust me, preying on children." William scowled. "I'll have you know I heroically rescued him from a cult," Sebastian said. "You heroically rescued a boy from a cult by having him sell his soul to you," the Shinigami sneered before continuing, "and are currently residing illegally in a house that belongs to neither of you. He owns the house. What have your cinematic records been telling you? He's my previous master's great-grandson." "I thought you said the Queen sent you," Sebastian said. "What do you mean? The Phantom Hive line was supposed to have died out. Now I have more overtime. I have to find whoever's been tampering with the library, and papers can be forged." William mumbled. "I apologize, young master," Sebastian said before tying the piece of cloth back in place. "I feel like I should know him, but I can't seem to figure out why. Is he one of the cult members?" Seal whispered in Sebastian's ear. "No, he is not, young master," Sebastian said, smirking at the Shinigami's expression. You're supposed to be dead," William blurted out, eyes wide. "I find it very offensive that you want me dead." "Sebastian, are you sure he wasn't part of the cult?" Seal asked his butler curiously. "I am quite sure, young master. However, it's rude not to introduce yourself to guests. We will have to have etiquette lessons." Sebastian sighed. "Right, my apologies. My name is Seal Hadrian Phantomive Potter. You may know me better as Harry James Potter." Seal said. "My lord, you forgot your titles," Sebastian said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "But it sounds stuffy."
Ciel Mutard.
"My name is William T. Spears, head of the Shinigami Dispatch Management Division." "How could you be Harry Potter? We have his whole life recorded. It does not say anywhere that he is related to the Phantomives," the Shinigami says, pulling out a book titled The 7 Great Works of Harry Potter, recorded by J.K. Rowling. He started flipping through the pages quickly, and Seal raised an eyebrow and looked questionably at Sebastian, who gave a shrug. "I went to Gringotts and took a blood test, and why are you here if you thought the Phantom Hive line died out?" Seal asked curiously. "I thought it was a lie and came to investigate personally. Phantom Hive papers can be forged, especially when you have a demon." The Shinigami spat out the last part. "Let me see the stupid book," Seal said, grabbing the book. It glowed bright white, and the words changed to The Life of Seal Phantomive Potter. "Oh, look at the cover now. It reads my real name," Seal said wryly. "Only a person with great power could do this to a cinematic record. I apologize for any trouble, and here's your mission, should you choose to accept the Queen's offer." William sighed, handing Seal the envelope, and pulled the book out of the child's grasp before snapping it shut. Seal looked up at William and frowned. "You made the line boring and changed it for worse. You should look up more pop culture. It'll help with your personality or lack of." "Young master, don't be rude," Sebastian said, suppressing a snicker. "I'm not being rude. I'm giving helpful tips," Seal said with a small smirk. "If you weren't so important, I would reap you right now." William growled. "Oh, and I accept the position now. Go work overtime or whatever you accountants do." Seal said with a wave of his hand and walked back to his room, leaving the two butlers in the doorway. Young master, begin your studies. We'll be studying history today, Sebastian called out, before turning back to the green-eyed Shinigami. He shows up in subtle ways. The vocabulary, the insults, the actions, and his overall demeanor. Sebastian said softly, much more brash though. But the story's changed. It may be the same plot, but the villain isn't the queen this time. It's another broken child, and a manipulator. The protagonist may be reincarnated, but he will be different. William said, your hints are quite vague, and did you know I found a soul piece latched on to his own? I removed it, of course, but if a shattered soul shard was wedged in his own, that would mean he was on the scene of a cold-blooded murder by a wizard. Sebastian said, what do you mean you found a soul shard wedged in the boy's? William asked, his head snapping up in surprise. Why are you telling me about soul flavors? William asked, looking at Sebastian unamused. Think of a bitter magical soul in the last 10 years who committed a murder. Who did not feel the feeling of sweet success? Sebastian asked. Well, there's Tom Marvolo Riddle, Bellatrix Lestrange, Lucius Abraxas Malfoy, and hundreds of Death Eaters. I have some work to get done. William muttered before giving Sebastian a curt nod and walked away. I will have to look up these Death Eaters. Tom Marvolo Riddle, he's one of the few demons aren't allowed to touch. 50 years back there was a decree, I believe, about not being allowed to touch such a soul, it being deemed too dangerous to contract with. Sebastian said under his breath. Contrary to popular belief, demons do not want the world to end in a blaze of fire or ice. They do enjoy walking the Earth's plane and getting a tasty, flavorful chocolate snack, known to humans as souls. Closed on his thumb, and Sebastian gently pulled the textbook out of his hands and checked what page Seal had been on. Page 3. His master had fallen asleep on page 3, how pathetic. Checking his pocket watch, Sebastian saw the time was 2:45 p.m. He should get started on dinner. Perhaps tomorrow, with young master's permission, he could go out and find some hired help. Looking back at the boy, Sebastian gave a small smile and picked him up bridal style. He couldn't just let young master have bad posture now, could he? He began walking down the hall to the master bedroom before stopping in surprise. Seal was cuddling. The blueonette was snuggling into Sebastian's chest, and Seal's hands had fistfuls of cloth in him. You're cute in an annoying way, you know that, young master? Sebastian said to the sleeping boy. Great, the boy is like a koala. Sebastian thought to himself while trying to free the boy's hands of his jacket. He had arrived at the young master's room to put him to bed, but he wasn't relinquishing his hold. Sebastian didn't want to hurt his young master by forcing his hands open. With a sigh, Sebastian unbuttoned his jacket and watched as Seal brought the jacket to his face and nuzzled it. So we find that William T. Spears is the current Queen's butler. We have learnt that someone changed Seal Harry's cinematic record. We have also learnt today, do not believe all the rumors you hear. Vague hints that we all get, so dramatic irony. Seal reminds Sebastian of a koala and that souls taste like chocolate. Also, the memory isn't exact, but I figured it's easier than saying Seal slapped Sebastian multiple times while Sebastian carried him off, dancing into the sunset. Member, Harry grew up happily a full year before it was torn away from him. His family was murdered and his house exploded, therefore similar to the fire. So the soul would have to be similar to Seal's in certain aspects in order to fulfill the requirement. Ring was just a trigger. Like with amnesia, certain things trigger memories. I wish you people read author notes. It's not always me yammering on, sometimes I try to teach, albeit rarely, but still I don't say piffle. Synonym to garbage, nonsense. Mystify people with your intelligence. If you can't do that, mystify them with your bullshit. Slitherclaw Tumbler. Wonderful, my lord, I know how to get you in easily. Sebastian said, smirking. How? Potter and Phantom Hive are too well known. Seal asked. Nightingale, however, is not. We could get you a black wig and a dress. I will pose as your father, and I had finally deemed it safe enough to come back to the city after 10 years. Sebastian replied, I am not wearing a dress, and how are you going to pass off 10 years of paranoia? Seal asked. As the last of the line, it would be wise to hide out, and my wife had died after being killed by Death Eaters when you were a few months old. Her name was Estella Blake, a French pureblood. Her parents will be Andrea and Gabriel Blake. Your paternal grandparents' names shall be Edward and Sarah Nightingale, also French purebloods, but we lost the French accent after 10 years of being in Britain. Sebastian said, what's my name and yours? Seal asked, dreading the answer. Mine shall be Christophe Nightingale, and you shall be Celine Nightingale. They are French pureblood lines, they just died out a century back, and I had found the family's bodies during the fire of 1893, and had taken the rings should such a thing be necessary. Sebastian replied, Wonderful, and how are we invited to this function? Seal asked. I don't have a dress. Seal said smugly, Yes you do actually, it was worn by your great-grandfather in 1880. He wore this for the Jack the Ripper case. Sebastian said, showing Seal the pink dress, but it's so old-fashioned. Seal said, staring at the pink frilly thing. But the theme is Victorian era. Sebastian replied smugly, I hate you.
Ciel muturde.
NNGH, said Sebastian. So tight? Stop, I can't breathe. I'm going to. Arg, my guts are coming out.
Ciel gaspède.
Your 12-year-old grandfather wore this. Even if he wasn't much bigger than you, you're still skinnier and his guts didn't come out, and this is good for your posture. Sebastian said before tying the corset tightly. How am I supposed to bloody walk in this? Seal asked, gesturing to the metal cage, corset and high-heeled shoes. You've been walking in clogs and you'll get used to it. Sebastian said before tugging the first layer of white cloth gently over Seal's head. Just a few more layers, young master, then we'll move to mannerisms, dining and walking. I hate you so much right now that if looks could kill, you would be killed in the most brutal way. Fingers cut off before being cauterized, then the hand, then the elbow. Each time a limb is cut off, it would be cauterized. All the way till your torso, then it would be a vivisection.
Ciel growled.
You would be such a good little demon. Sebastian said wistfully. How did you even keep this in perfect condition? Seal asked curiously. What kind of butler would I be if I couldn't do something as simple as preserve a dress perfectly for over 100 years? Sebastian asked. Human one.
Ciel replied.
But I am not human, young master. Sebastian said, quite true, oh look, we're here. Seal said. Seal walked beside Sebastian nervously, not from the idea that he might be used in another dark ritual, but that he'd mess up his table. Where is he? Seal asked, scanning the crowd. The blond man with the silver snake head cane. Sebastian replied, That's a man? Seal asked, staring at the long-haired man. He's wearing a suit, young masked young mistress. Sebastian answered with a wry smile. He could have been a cross-dresser or something. Seal said, staring at the blonde. Oh, young mistress, how you amuse me. Sebastian said with a shake of his head. You can't call me that, it'll look suspicious. You're supposed to be my father, not my butler, Seal hissed, scanning the crowd to see if anyone had overheard. Of course, Celine, Lucius Malfoy is a married man. But his wife, Narcissa, and son Draco may also be a part of this. Sebastian whispered into his ear as he went to fix the wig. I'll look for the son, then you talk with the host of the party. I'll summon you if there are any problems. Seal said before walking over to the area that had children crowded around it.
Hello, I'm Celine Nightingale.
Pleased to make your acquaintance. Seal said politely, stumbling over his name. He hoped he could pass it off as nervousness. My name Draco Malfoy, my father is the one hosting this function. You are a pureblood, aren't you? The snooty blonde boy asked. I suppose I must be if I was allowed to enter this establishment. Seal said carefully. Technically he was of pureblood since both Phantomhive and Potter are both old pureblood family names. But somewhere down the Phantomhive line a squib must have popped up, or they left the magical world, placing wards around the property to disrupt magic wavelengths, as to stay under the radar. After all, you have to have magic to summon a demon, and how else could the Phantomhives carry out their duty so well? Seeing as how Elizabeth was his cousin, she might also be of the same blood status, but who his grandfather married is debatable. I suppose you're right. What political side does your father support? The Dark Syndicate or the Light? Draco asked. The Light. My mother was killed several years ago in a Death Eater attack at Diagon Alley. He isn't too fond of the Dark Syndicate since it was supported by the Dark Lord and his followers. Father carries a few votes in the French Waisengamot, but he's currently neutral, not agreeing with the Light's way of stamping out the old traditions. Seal answered, sticking to the story. Really? Well, I must go speak to my mother, we're running low on tarts. Draco said, gesturing to the plate of strawberry tarts that had less than half missing. Of course, I'll stay here. These refreshments look absolutely delightful. Seal said before picking up a tart and nibbled on it delicately. Seal hoped that this was the last time he had to speak like this. He practically swallowed a dictionary to learn all of this etiquette and vocabulary. He watched as Draco walked off with his coattails fluttering behind him to a cold-looking woman socializing with a few other guests. She wore a dress the color of blue from the Malfoy family crest. Her blonde hair was piled elegantly into a bun, and she walked over regally to the table. We'll have to talk to the house elves. They've been so negligent with the refreshments. Draco's mother murmured. Oh, hello, your father is Lord Nightingale. Correct, the blonde woman asked, turning to their guest. Your family is of the neutral party, yes? Lady Malfoy asked. Yes. But father is more particular towards the light order. But he wishes the two sides could coexist in harmony. Some dark magics should be banned, but ancient traditions should be allowed. Seal said, trying to remember everything from his terribly, horrible, boring lessons. Is that so, young Nightingale? We'll just have to change his mind. Now, won't we? Come, let me give you a tour of the house. Narcissa said before tapping Draco on the shoulder and saying, tell your father I'm giving the Nightingale heiress a tour of the house. Narcissa once again opened the door, but this time she gestured for Seal to enter before her. Seal entered, wondering what the Malfoys could be hiding. He stepped into the room and breathed in through his nose, trying to calm his nerves, only to give a sharp gasp as a glowing red light illuminated the area briefly before everything went black. The spell is Stupefy, non-verbally cast. When Seal awoke, he found himself in a small cell with dirt floors and no windows. He slipped his hand into one of the many folds of his dress and waited. Seal decided to inspect the cell he was staying in and checked his wig to make sure it was still on straight. The cell also had multiple runes, mostly to stop magic wavelengths, but they had no anti-demon wards, which worked in his favor. His wig was still on perfectly straight. No wonder it hurt so much getting the wig to stay the way Sebastian pinned it. Nothing short of a banishing, enlarging, or a lot of skill could remove the hairpiece. Seal jumped when he heard the door open. He looked up and pressed his back against the wall so as not to be completely defenseless. A blonde figure stepped through the doorway, and she saw that it was Lucius Malfoy, the host of the gathering. It really was quite sad when figures with such high spots in the government did this. It was so easy for them to bribe their way out. Seal stared blankly at the blonde lord and waited for him to brag and spill his plan. He pushed a small red button and asked, I'm sorry, did I somehow offend your family's honor, or is this how you treat all your guests? Lucius looked at Seal in surprise. Seal supposed that the man wanted him to be crying, terrified, or pleading. Been there, done that. The cult was much scarier. This was like going on a kiddie coaster. Small thrills, nothing terrifying, and he would not shed tears in front of people like him ever again. Seal gave a pause before continuing. My guess is you hold the neutrals' children hostage. Have them make some magical vow that stops them from ever speaking of this again. Possibly have them give you gold and gain more ground against the Light Order by having their Wisengamot votes. The ones that refuse, well, their children go missing, don't they? Nightingale. So you're telling me that you're just going to walk up to my father and tell him that you're holding me hostage in your dungeons. Tell him what you want, and if he refuses, I get sent to a cult, to be used in dark rituals. Possibly demon summoning or reviving the dead. Seal said, hoping to weasel out a confession. Yes, but it won't matter soon. Once your father agrees, I obliviate you and your father after finishing the deal and forming the vow. It's always good to be cautious. There may be a way for you to worm your way out of the vow anyways. Lucius answered, wonderful, and I am so damn tired of pet names, little Robin, little Nightingale, little girl, little boy, little master, little lady, it just go on and on. I mean, I'm not that short. Seal huffed before he pushed the button once more and yelled, Sebastian, I order you to get me out of this cell and apprehend the Malfoys. Seal's Faustian contract blazed a bright purple, and he smirked at the blonde lord. No one can hear you, little one, we're far from the ballroom, but maybe you would do better being auctioned off in the black market. I might be able to fetch a high price with a nightingale like you. Can you sing, little nightingale? I think I would like to hear you sing. I don't think a bit of the Cruciatus curse could hurt, Lucius said with a wide smile before brandishing his cane. Crucio, he said gleefully. Seal struggled, trying not to scream. I will not give him the satisfaction of seeing my pain. I will not give in to someone so disgusting. He will not have the pleasure of hearing my screams, because I will not bow to the likes of him. Oh, little nightingale, you're not singing, we need to fix that. Lucius said, looking at the silent, writhing form of Seal. Do you know how long it will take me to fix that dress? That was a family heirloom. It belonged to their great-grandfather. You wouldn't happen to be related to Viscount Alistair Chambers, would you? Sebastian said, shaking his head.
Impossible.
The only way to get in is to say the password. It's warded against spells. It even has repelling and notice me not charms on it. It repels humans and half-humans. What are you? Lucius snarled at the demon. It was quite fun destroying the portrait of Jim Mackin, but you might know of him as Aloys Trancy, and well, I am simply one hell of a butler. Sebastian answered, a small smile playing on his lips. Wait, isn't he your father? Lucius said, looking back and forth between Seal and Sebastian. Celine's father is Christophe Nightingale, this is Sebastian, my butler.
Ciel corrected.
Commoner. I could be a circus performer or a detective. For all you know, I might be a hallucination. Seal said, you're quite right, young master, but as fun as this is, I have orders to fill. Sebastian said before ripping off the door to Seal's cell.
Impossible.
Lucius shouted, his hand shaking as he pointed his cane at Seal. Sebastian, can we hurry this up? I want some treacle tart and this corset is killing me.
Ciel complained.
Of course, young master. Sebastian said, pulling out some rope. I don't even want to know where you kept that. Seal deadpanned, seeing the large bundle of rope being pulled out of nowhere. I have reached the conclusion that you've done this before and knew exactly what to pack. Seal said as Sebastian carried him back to their carriage. I have done something remarkably similar, but this was quite different. I doubt that he will crawl back to crime so quickly, but he will still be a powerful figure in the eye of the public, young master. Sebastian replied, well, at least you know what you're doing. But won't they know what you look like now? And well, as they say, when the piece fits. The Malfoys will know that it was the Phantom Hive house. Seal said, I suppose you're right. Seal said, as Sebastian set him into the cushioned interior of the carriage. When life gives you lemons, make grape juice and sit back and watch the world ask how you did it. Tory Truex, you've got to have a sense of humor to keep your sanity, Lancebase. I have no need for the Queen's coins. I only require one thing. Please, my lord, grant me the gift of true laughter. Undertaker said, I have one, it's a classic. What side of the tiger has the most stripes? On the outside. Get it, haha, Lau said. Your turn, Earl. Undertaker said, let me handle this, young master. All of you outside, and do not try to listen in or watch. Sebastian said before ushering out Seal, Madame Red, Lau and Grell. Seal stared blankly at the shop as he heard loud laughter and saw the store shake. You can come in now. Sebastian said brightly, opening the door. Young master, it's time to wake up. Seal heard. I don't wanna. Seal mumbled back before burying himself deep into the covers. Young master, we have a busy day. We will be going over the history of magic and spell theory. Then we will test you on your etiquette, your violin lessons, muggle history, family history, firearms, your paperwork, and then we have to get you a fitting, seeing as you've only been wearing your predecessor's clothing, it's terribly outdated. It's also young master's birthday. Sebastian said as he opened the curtains, allowing the sunlight to filter in. I'd rather stay in bed, seeing as how I was sold to a cult on my birthday. Seal commented wryly, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. Completely understandable, young master. Don't rub your eyes, it will damage them. Sebastian chastised before tying the eye patch over Seal's right eye. Yes, mother.
Ciel replied sarcastically.
Don't be rude. It's unbecoming of one of your standing. Sebastian said as he dressed Seal. Seal rolled his visible eye and looked out the window. I had a flashback, you know. It was the Jack the Ripper case. I don't remember Undertaker, but I have a feeling he isn't human. Sutcliffe was a Shinigami and Madame Red was a murderer. Seal said, his eyes distant, as he nibbled on his breakfast. I don't feel much like eating today. Seal sighed, putting his hardly eaten breakfast down. Would young master prefer something sweet or a cup of tea? Sebastian asked. No, I'm fine. Sometimes I have difficulties knowing who I am. Am I Seal Vincent Phantomhive or am I Seal Hadrian Phantomhive, Potter? Seal said, rubbing the blue diamond that rested on his thumb absent-mindedly. Why does Phantom Hive come before Potter anyways, Sebastian? Seal asked. Descending order Emperor, King, Archduke, Grand Duke, Grand Prince, Prince, Duke, Sovereign Prince, Marquis, Count Earl, Viscount, Baron, Baronet, Hereditary Knight and Knight. We have been through this before, young master. I had been hoping that we wouldn't have to go through that lesson again. Sebastian sighed. It's only been a few months. I may have been born into nobility, but I wasn't raised by it.
Ciel scolded.
You are right, of course, young master. Now shall we start with history or theory first? Sebastian asked, putting on a pair of glasses. You don't actually need those, do you? Seal asked. No, I do not. If I am to be a tutor, should I not look the part? Sebastian asked. Never mind, and let's just get history out of the way.
Ciel mumbled.
Now the Goblin Wars happened in the what on earth is that sound? Sebastian asked, hearing a loud banging noise coming from the entry hall. Do you think we'll need to hire security for when we're gone? Seal asked, not even bothering to panic. No one knows that Lord Phantomhive is back besides the Queen, Spears and Gringotts. Oh my, that's actually quite a few people. Hopefully Sutcliffe hasn't caught wind of my return. That would be dreadful. Sebastian replied. Oh, never mind, I remember now. Sutcliffe is another Shinigami. He wouldn't use the front door though. Sutcliffe would use the window. He would also be yelling Sebichan through the halls. Seal said, his lips twitching slightly. Quite right. Shall we go greet your uninvited guest? Sebastian asked. Yes. Let's give them the infamous Phantomhive hospitality. Seal replied, pulling out a pistol from his desk drawer. The duo walked down to the entrance hall where they heard a loud banging at the door. The sound echoed throughout the room when with a sudden boom the door was ripped off of its hinges and fell to the floor with a crash. Standing in the doorway was a giant of a man. His hair was horribly unmanaged and reminded Seal of a caveman. His coat was of sturdy material but poor workmanship. Seal felt that he would have had a kinder opinion of the man if his front door hadn't been broken down. But as they say, first impressions are everything. I'm looking for a Harry Potter. The large man said. Well, obviously you've been misinformed. Harry James Potter isn't real. Seal said. He wasn't lying, Harry Potter was a fake name. Seal bristled at that, he wasn't that short. It was hard to understand, but he got what the man was saying. There is no one else here, besides my butler Sebastian and I. My name is Earl Seal Hadrian Phantomhive Potter. Since you've barged into my home uninvited, I would prefer if you've left. I have a full schedule today, and it is quite rude to ask for someone's name in their home without first introducing yourself or scheduling an appointment. Seal said in a cool tone of voice. Potter. The man asked. Sebastian, please escort the man out. It's obvious that he stopped listening after the second sentence. Seal said before turning around to head back up the stairs. Your little Harry? You look nothing like Lily or James. The giant said. I take after my grandfather. Now please leave, before my butler uses force. Seal said, growing tired of repeating himself. But you're Hogwarts Letta. The giant protested. Sebastian, you may use your knives if he doesn't leave in the next minute. Tell your school's headmaster that I will be homeschooled. Seal said. But you're Harry Potter, our savior. The man said. I don't care. Your world left me to rot for 10 years. They obviously don't need me. So why do I have to go to this school? Sebastian is a perfectly capable teacher. Sebastian, I order you to escort the intruder out. Seal said before turning on his heel and marching up the stairs. Dumbledore would know what to do. Hagrid mumbled, walking out of the manor. Sebastian shook his head and set about repairing the door. It wouldn't be good to have a drafty room now, would it? Sebastian walked into young master's study and saw the boy reading a mystery novel by Arthur Wordsmith. Young master, would you like for me to find you some house servants? To maintain the house while we're off on missions. They can be magical. I could tutor them outside of your own sessions. Sebastian asked. Why, you're perfectly capable on your own. Seal asked with a frown. It would be good to have someone guard the manor while we're gone. Sebastian replied. Sure, make sure they're trustworthy and don't have families. Don't kill anyone though. Seal said, not wanting to kill innocent people just to have servants. Yes, my lord. I will look for those around your age. You need to interact with others. You're quite the hermit and I fear for your social skills they're quite lacking. Sebastian said, yes, but don't bother getting servants now. That school will send more people and I don't want incompetence messing up. Seal said, knowing that his servants wouldn't have the skill of the previous Phantom Hive staff. Lunch is ready, young master. Sebastian said, entering the study once more. Right, I'll be down in a sec. Just gonna finish this sentence. Seal mumbled before standing up, heading to the dining room. Today's menu is fettuccine alfredo, with garlic bread and breaded chicken. For dessert, it will be a chocolate mousse. Sebastian said as he served the dish. Looks delicious. Seal said. His thoughts were interrupted by a knocking at the door. It would seem you have another guest, young master. Shall I escort them to the dining hall? Sebastian asked. Yes, give them a cup of tea also. Seal said, twirling the pasta onto his fork. Of course, young master. Sebastian said before walking briskly to the door. May I help you? Sebastian asked, seeing three figures standing on the doorstep. One was a sallow-faced man with greasy black hair and black robes. It was obvious he was a potions master. Being indoors all day would give you a pale complexion. The greasy hair came from potion fumes and the black robes were to hide stains. Successful, it was more or less who taught it and how. The last one was dressed in a bright blue robe with pink animated rabbits hopping around the cloth. His long white beard was tucked into his belt. His face was grandfatherly while his eyes screamed cunning and manipulative. We are here to see one, Mr. Harry James Potter. The old man said, there is no one here that goes by that name, and I couldn't just let three strangers into young master's home. Why, what kind of butler would I be? Sebastian asked. I am Headmaster Albus Dumbledore of Hogwarts. Supreme Mugwump, Order of Merlin First Class and Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot. The bearded man said, I am Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall, Head of Gryffindor House and the Transfiguration Professor. The woman said, my name is Severus Snape. I am the head of Slytherin and the Potions Professor. The man with black greasy hair said, I see. My young master is eating his dinner right now. Would you like some tea? Sebastian asked. Who are you? We have introduced ourselves, but we have received no names in return. Snape said, I am Sebastian Michaelis and I am the Phantom Hive butler. Sebastian said before politely declining the lemon drop. Young master, you have three guests. Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Minerva McGonagall, the deputy headmistress, head of Gryffindor and Transfiguration Professor. And this is Severus Snape, head of Slytherin and the Potions Professor. Sebastian said before going to make some tea. Who might you be, my boy, if you're not Harry Potter? Dumbledore asked, his eyes twinkling. Seal tried not to roll his visible eye and set his fork down. I am the Earl Seal Hadrian Phantomhive Potter. I am the son of James, Charles Potter and Lily Elizabeth Potter née Phantomhive. Grandson of Thomas Leo Phantomhive, Alice Helen Phantomhive née Kingsley, Harold Potter and Calypso Potter née Greengrass. I can keep going, it just gets very tedious. Seal said before he resumed eating. Lily was a pureblood? It was thought that she was a muggle-born. McGonagall said, her eyes wide. Very old lines as well. Snape said, then why does this letter say to Harry James Potter? It was written by a magical quill created by Rowena Ravenclaw herself. Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling like mad. Clearly someone changed the name or the magic is starting to deteriorate. It is 1,000 years old.
Ciel replied.
When do you want to leave for Diagon Alley to retrieve your school items? Dumbledore asked. I'm not going. The Phantomhives have been homeschooled for generations. Before going to the Muggle school Weston College, whether it be for a year or all the way through, the Phantomhives have not attended Hogwarts since a little past the 1600s. I also have a company to revive and the family history to learn. I must also learn proper etiquette. There's a lot to catch up on.
Ciel replied.
Surely you want to walk the halls your parents walked. It's a wonderful chance to learn about your parents. Dumbledore tried again. What difference does it make? They're dead. My grandfather attended Weston College and caused the third blue miracle to happen. I couldn't just skip out on that family tradition, now could I? Seal replied, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Blue miracle? McGonagall asked. Sebastian, do you want to explain? Seal asked. Prefect. Sebastian gave a pause before continuing. Vincent Phantomhive led Sapphire Owl to victory for the first time in Weston College history. Diedrich then became his fag, as that was the punishment decided by Vincent. A fag does chores for the older students. That was the first blue miracle. Sebastian said, it sounds similar to Hogwarts. In format, for houses, a prefect for each house and gender, a sports competition, dividing students by personality. McGonagall said, the second blue miracle happened when Vincent's son Seal Phantomhive, who is Lily's grandfather, went to investigate Derek Arden. Derek had not returned home and had not written to his family. He had transferred from Scarlet House to Violet. Seal entered the school with his butler disguised as a teacher and asked around. Nobody knew anything about Derek Arden. All we found out was that he was amazingly talented and charming. Sebastian took a slight pause. If he spoke without breaks, it would look suspicious. The only way to find more information was to ask the elusive principal. To do that, you have to attend the midnight tea party. To attend, you have to be a prefect or a fag of a prefect. Another way to get in would be from the cricket tournament. Out or 44 students. 36 if you subtract the prefects and their fags. Sebastian took another break before continuing again. Best to make it look like you're trying to remember. Seal was the fag of a prefect's fag. He had special privileges such as attending the Swan Gazebo, but he was unable to attend the midnight tea party. Seal led the team to victory using various tactics, such as cliff tactic, using sound as a signal and switching the game ball so he took a hit but won the game. Sebastian finished, leaving out the rest of the story. Did he enter the tea party and finish the investigation? McGonagall asked. Yes, he did. The third blue miracle was Seal's son, who led the team to victory cleanly and without trickery, unlike his father and possibly grandfather. Sebastian finished. Snape stayed quiet. There was something off about the second story. Also, how would the butler know all of these stories? Something was wrong, but what was it? My namesake has the most interesting life out of the people we've studied so far. Alice in a close second, though.
Ciel commented.
My boy, are you sure you don't want to come to Hogwarts? There's a world full of magic out there. Dumbledore said, I know. I had a heritage test at Gringotts. I see no need to leave the comforts of my home for your Hogwarts. Seal said haughtily. He was getting incredibly irritated. Your terrible personality is shining through, my lord. Sebastian said, his eyes glimmering in amusement. You made me study history for hours. A giant knocked down my door, and these people are trying to force me to attend their school. I am perfectly fine with being homeschooled. Plus, I want to avoid Grell. If he finds out you're back, then my window will never be in one piece. Let's not forget, I want to avoid being heard of, period.
Ciel huft.
My lord, if I may, there is someone at the door. Sebastian said, if it's William, ask him for pop culture references. If it's Grell, give him a good kick in the face. Seal said before turning to his chocolate mousse, stabbing at it moodily with his spoon. Sebastian's lips twitched at his young master's requests. They weren't orders, but he wouldn't mind fulfilling the request. Sebastian opened the door to see Undertaker. Give me one good reason not to slam the door in your face. Sebastian said, I was sent along with a letter from William. He said he didn't want to be contaminated any further by your filth. Won't you invite me in? Undertaker said in a sing-song voice. Do come in. Sebastian said, frowning. My young master is currently eating in the dining hall. Sebastian said, hello, Earl. You're still as tiny as ever. Undertaker sang, hello? Do I happen to know you? You seem familiar. Acquaintance? Seal asked, bristling slightly at being called tiny. I'm a family friend. Now give me a laugh, and this letter is yours. Undertaker said, now I remember you. What a terrible day that was. All right. A Sunday school teacher asked her children on the way to service. And why is it necessary to be quiet in church? One little girl replied, because people are sleeping. Seal tried. Another try, Earl? It was amusing, but my price is laughter. Undertaker said, when life gives you lemons, make grape juice and sit back and watch the world ask how you did it. Seal said, earning him multiple stares. Undertaker gave a snort and said, all right, Earl. May not be a grand laugh, but you're getting better at this. Here's your letter. William sends his regards. All right, Dumbledore. Allow me to bring my butler and I will attend this school of yours, Seal said before folding the letter back up. He had quickly read through it, and apparently something big was going down in the castle. Seal rubbed his temples. I am sorry, my boy, but Dumbledore began only to be cut off. Look, do you want me to come go your school or not? I am technically emancipated and can do whatever I please. I will only attend this school if my butler comes with me. Seal said stubbornly. No servants are allowed. I am sorry, my boy. Dumbledore said. That was a lie. In the Founder's time, multiple young lords and ladies had servants that came with them. That's a blatant lie. I've read the rulebook. I was only testing you and you failed, headmaster. Dishonesty is a terrible policy. Seal said with a shake of his head. Snape watched on, quietly observing the boy. The boy he had been expecting was brash, rude, pampered, and a James clone. Severus gave a slight shake of his head and walked out the door, robes billowing behind him in the breeze. When Snape reached the gardens, he stroked a single white lily before disapparating. A mission from the Queen at Hogwarts. Could be interesting, Seal said, resting his chin atop his interlaced fingers. For looking like James. Hagrid broke and enter. McGonagall is humorless and Undertaker has not been fully remembered yet. October 14, 2013. Seal's wand has to be different from canon since there's no connection between him and Voldemort. Draco will show up and it won't really be much other than dialogue. Pairings will go to majority and then I will finalize it. No hinny or drarry. Also remember, Seal is a ball of angst and slightly unhinged. Characters you want to see reincarnated and into who, suggestions are welcome. Undertaker can make children give up their souls willing. I think he can get out of trouble with the Shinigami. Ahem, before I forget, all pureblood names are from the Victorian era. I searched up some names and saw over 3/4 of the Harry Potter names on there. I apologize for my ramble. I wanted to stay home today. Seal grumbled as he walked towards Ollivander's wands. We do not want to be caught up in the last-minute rush, young master. Besides, we need to get you fitted anyways. You did tell Dumbledore you were going to his school. That requires a uniform and you can't wear fashion from the Victorian era all the time. Sebastian said, I hate you and your logic. These clothes are perfectly fine. I have no desire to be dressed up like a doll. Since it's apparently unbecoming to not wear formal clothes as a lord, I would rather wear this. At least it has shorts. Seal said. Harry Potter. Ollivander started. My name is not Harry Potter. It is Seal Phantomive Potter.
Ciel exclaimed.
Young master, you forgot your titles and your middle name. Sebastian reprimanded. It's a mouthful now, shush, you're taking away the effect.
Ciel scolded.
Of course, young master. Shall we set about finding your wand? Sebastian said. Oh, I apologize, I was just surprised. The last Phantom Hive that came in here was over 200 years ago. They usually go to wand crafters, but they were banned 70 years ago, since not all crafters place the trace on the wand. I, however, learnt the craft before the teaching of such a skill was banned. I will be able to help you find a suitable wand and your butler one as well, although his will be to give the show of a magic tutor should it be necessary. I know all about your little contract, but don't worry, I shan't tell. Ollivander said before entering the back room. Sebastian, how does he know this?
Ciel said.
How do you know all this? Seal asked curiously. I am simply one hell of a butler. Sebastian said as Ollivander came from the back carrying 2 boxes. Sorrowful bird. Is known as the Irish Phoenix, rebirth. You is known to be rare and only pairs with those destined for greatness. Ebony, you will do everything possible to attain your goal. No one will be able to change your mind. Ollivander said softly, opening the box to show the 2 woods entwined. The black and off-white wood perfectly smooth and straight. The handle was simple yet elegant and trimmed in silver. Seal gingerly picked up the wand and marveled at the warmth that flooded his body. A shower of blue, silver, and black sparks erupted from the tip. I had never thought I would sell such a peculiar wand, but no matter, on to you, butler. Ollivander said. In order to work with a demon, the wand requires 2 cores. That of a Dementor's heartstring and one that the demon provides himself. The wood is red oak and hawthorn. Hawthorn is known to be quite contradictory, and red oak is known to be used by those with fast reflexes, quick wits, and the adaptable. Fits you quite well, don't you think? Ollivander asked, handing the red and cream-colored wand to the demon butler. You will have to place your article inside yourself. The price will be 40 galleons. For the 4 woods and the rare ingredients. Ollivander said. Seal handed Ollivander the money before saying, well, if that's it, let's just go back to the manor. I have important stuff to do. Young master, there's still your fitting, and your schedule today was purposely empty so you could relax on your birthday. Sebastian said, looking amused. I don't know what you're talking about. This is hardly relaxing. Seal replied, leading the way towards the alley's exit, only to be steered in the opposite direction by Sebastian. Young master, the tailor's in the opposite direction. Honestly, you have the map as well. It's better to do this now than later. Sebastian chastised as he pulled open the shop door. Seal was instantly placed on a stool and had Madame Malkin twittering around him. Your clothes are terribly out of style, my dear. Your first year at Hogwarts, am I correct? Oh, you're so thin. I'll have to get you some formal and casual robes as well if this is what you call clothing. I hate you so much right now, Sebastian. You're going to get it later. Seal told his butler, who was looking on amusedly. Sebastian only gave a slight grin and started flipping through the racks. Seal gave a huff and almost jumped when he heard, my name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Your parents are our kind, right? Seal turned and saw a bleach-blonde boy his age with a face that was akin to a ferret's. Yes, my parents were both wizards. My name is Seal Phantomhive. Seal said shortly. Young master, you forgot your title and you dropped your second last name. Sebastian said mildly. It's a mouthful, and I didn't even want to go to this school.
Cielüft.
You don't want to go to Hogwarts? Draco asked, shocked. No, my family is usually tutored for their whole life, then at the age of 13 we enter the Muggle world. I have a family business to run. On top of that, I have to associate with Muggle noblemen.
Ciel replied.
Why can't your family do that? Draco asked. They're dead. Seal replied, and that ended the conversation, filling the next few minutes with awkward silence. The only sound was that of the measuring tapes snapping shut and a pencil scratching down measurements. That boy is a descendant of Aloys, correct? Seal asked. Yes, his family are indeed related to the late Earl Trancey. Some wizards may have portraits of those outside of their family, but the Malfoys are descended from him. I wonder how they would react if they knew that Aloys Trancey was actually a Muggle-born. Sebastian said. They would deny it or say they weren't related at all. Seal said, his voice tinged with amusement. But it's all ancient history now, young master. No way to prove it, sadly. Well, besides Veritaserum, this knowledge would cause such chaos in the wizarding community. It would be wonderful. Sebastian said dreamily. You go do that. After you take my soul. Seal said. Their family have not wronged me yet, well, much anyways. Seal said, hopping off the stool, seeing the magically animated sewing materials, finishing off his new set of robes. Seal paid the tailor and left the shop. Shall we head to the magical menagerie next, my lord? Sebastian asked, his eyes gleaming. I would prefer going home, but why not? Seal said, walking towards the magical pet shop. As soon as Seal entered the shop, he broke out into a sneezing fit. Sebastian, you knew there were cats here, Seal said, pointing his finger accusingly at his butler. Only to see the demon cuddling a cat with a squashed-in face. Let's go, you cat-obsessed moron. Seal said 5 minutes later, having grown bored of watching his butler. Of course, young master. Sebastian said, giving the deformed cat one last loving stroke. Wait, don't you want to take him? The shopkeeper asked, panicked. This may be their last chance to sell the damn monster.
No.
Seal said shortly before walking out of the shop. I apologize, the young master has a cat allergy and has bad experience with them. Sebastian said, remembering when Seal had told him about Mrs. Fig. Photos were never as good as the real thing, and he supposed sneezing whenever you're around said animals, you grow a dislike for them. Sebastian, I want you to make me some dessert when we get home. Some treacle tart, strawberry shortcake, chocolate pudding, raspberry parfait, and a vanilla cupcake. Seal said, young master, you'll spoil your appetite for dinner. Sebastian said passively, I don't care. You dragged me on this miserable outing and I want to drown out the horribly long hours of shopping and sugar. Then I'll be in sugary bliss and the whole day will have seemed to have gone well. Seal replied while preparing to flew home. Of course, young master. Sebastian said with a shake of his head as Seal fled off. Sebastian stepped into the fireplace and shouted off their home address, disappearing in a whirl of green flames. Yes, the chapter is short, but I have a lot of homework. I just had to include the pet shop scene. I felt the urging for Seal to use that line. The wand fits well with the current Seal's personality, but I would advise reading up on the full descriptions yourself, seeing as how I only did a brief explanation. I figured Dementor heartstring because Dementors are magical creatures that suck out souls. So why not? Know who the cat is? I've been cutting out chunks of my author's notes. October 18, 2013. Wow, 200 followers. I never thought so many of you would like this. Happy Halloween, to Darkest Revelations. Yes, Sebastian is looser, but lest we forget, Harry is Seal. And Harry tells Dobby not to call him Master. But as he and Seal are one entity, he's fine with being teased on occasion. He won't tell Sebastian to not call him young master, as it just feels right to him. Seal will be more grateful to Sebastian, he just won't show it in obvious ways. Seal is a very subtle person. Harry can be too when he tries, which isn't often, but still. Background on Voldemort and Dumbledore would be nice. I know I bash Dumbles, but he rubs me the wrong way. I wish J.K. Rowling's would write a book on Voldemort's pre-canon life. I mean, I totally crushed on Tom Riddle for years. Why would he kill thousands of people? Killing Muggleborns seems like total BS. It's hypocritical for him to do that. Lord in amusement before grabbing a fresh treacle tart off his serving platter and waved it above Seal's face. The boy twitched slightly, debating over taking the bribe or not. Sebastian gave a small grin as he saw the boy sit up and blindly reach for the tart with his eyes closed. Young master, might I suggest opening your eyes? Sebastian asked. Or you could hand me the tart and let me get some more sleep. Seal replied, poking Sebastian in the face. Why is your chest so squishy? Since you're a demon and everything, I thought you'd have like rock-hard abs or something. That's because you're prodding my face, young moss, Sebastian said as he was cut off by Seal's finger entering his mouth. Well, this is strange, Seal said before opening his eyes. He froze for a second and looked from Sebastian's face to his finger and back again before pulling his finger out. This brings back no memories, I thought it would, but I guess this never happened before. No, it hasn't, young master. Might I suggest getting ready for your first day of boarding school? Sebastian said, pulling out one of Seal's new suits. I don't like that fabric. I like the old ones better, Seal said, looking at the suit with disdain. It was a regular black and white suit complete with a black neck ribbon. Young Master Sebastian started before being cut off by the bluinet. I refuse to wear it. Get me one of the old suits, Seal said, staring at the plain suit. You had me pack them all away for when you attend school, Sebastian said exasperatedly. Well, pull them out, we only have 45 minutes before we have to leave. Seal said. Very well then, young master, Sebastian said with a scowl, and here he thought that this phantom hive wouldn't be as bratty as his namesake. Sebastian pulled out the green suit and blue neck ribbon before returning to Seal's room. Sebastian dressed the boy and checked his pocket watch. Young master, I believe it is time to depart for King's Cross Station. All right, let's go, Seal said. The duo exited the manor and headed to the station, whispering to each other quietly as the chauffeur was not too subtly trying to listen in. What can you tell me about this elusive Dark Lord I've defeated? Seal asked quietly. They say his name was Lord Voldemort. He was the heir of Salazar Slytherin, and is possibly the strongest recorded Dark Lord in history. Sebastian replied just as quietly. Who was he before Voldemort? Why would he choose something as tacky as flight from death? Seal asked. No one that I've asked seemed to know. It is most likely that he attended Hogwarts in 1942. The Chamber of Secrets was opened inside of the castle during that year, and the heir released a creature onto the school that paralyzed Muggleborns along with killing one in the process. Only descendants of Slytherin can speak Parseltongue, Sebastian said obediently. Nice work. So a Slytherin student from 1942. The school library's yearbooks should be useful, Seal said thoughtfully, not noticing Sebastian's eyes widen in surprise. The young master actually seemed grateful. How strange. I never had a master like this before, although the Phantomives do seem to have a knack for doing the improbable. The pair stepped out of the vehicle a few minutes later, having arrived at their destination. The pair wheeled the large trunk out and into the station. So where is this platform 9 3/4? Seal asked, staring at his ticket dubiously. Well, I would expect it to be in between platform 9 and 10. Sebastian replied, receiving a withering look from the brunette. I hadn't thought of that. You know, running straight into a solid brick wall sounds like loads of fun. Seal said sarcastically. Well, it seemed highly suspicious that she wouldn't know where the platform is. Seal watched as the woman ushered her family through and seemed to wait outside the entry for a few minutes before surveying the area before entering through the barrier after her children. See, young master, easy as that, Sebastian said. Her actions seemed highly unusual, and if I crash, I'll order you to do something extremely embarrassing in public, or to the Shinigami. Seal said as he began walking towards the pillar, Sebastian close behind wheeling his trunk on a trolley. Seal was a foot away from, colliding with the column, and closed his eyes. He walked straight through the pillar and opened his eyes when he heard the whistling of the train and almost jumped in surprise. In front of him was a red steam engine, and the sign above him read Hogwarts Express, platform 9 3/4. I have no idea what you're talking about, and wipe that smirk off your face, Seal said before boarding the train. Do you require anything Bakken? Sebastian asked. No, I do not. What does Bakken mean, Sebastian? Seal asked. It is simply Japanese for young master, Sebastian replied. The duo began to converse further until they were interrupted by one of the red-headed boys they had seen run through the barrier. Hello, do you mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full. If you had actually looked, you would have noticed that compartment to the right is empty, but if you want, then you may. Seal said, eyes narrowed ever so slightly in suspicion. Seal had made sure to head near the very back of the train. After all, it was the emptiest area, and they were less likely to be interrupted. Seal opened his mouth only for Sebastian to nudge him in the ribs and say, full name and don't forget your titles, Bakken. Seal scowled but did as Sebastian said. I am the Earl Seal Hadrian Phantomive Potter, and this is my butler Sebastian Michaelis. You're Harry Potter. Have you got the, scar? Ronald asked, eyes wide. I have multiple scars, and my name is Seal, not Harry. Seal corrected, disliking the redhead more and more. Have you got a lightning bolt scar on your forehead then? If you do, can I see it? Ronald Weasley asked. Yes, I do. I am quite confused on why you'd want to stare at some scar tissue on my forehead. Seal said, his voice getting colder and colder. You know who gave it to you when you deflected the killing curse back onto him? Ronald replied. Seal was about to snap back at the boy when the door to the compartment opened. In popped a bushy-haired girl and a round-faced boy. Hello, I'm Hermione Granger, and this is Neville Longbottom. We're looking for Neville's toad, Trevor. Have you seen him? Who are you, by the way? It's all very fascinating, this magic. What house do you think you'll be in? I hope for Gryffindor, but Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. You with the blue hair, your clothes are very outdated. She said this all very fast, leaving Ronald blank-faced. Fine, I'll use my full name and titles. Just stop poking me in the ribs, Sebastian. I apologize. I am the Earl Seal Hadrian Phantomhive Potter, and that is my butler Sebastian Michaelis. We have not seen his toad, but, Sebastian, I order you to find Neville Longbottom's toad, Trevor, and to bring him here. My house would either be Slytherin or Ravenclaw, but I won't fight the hat much. I would prefer Ravenclaw, seeing as how I'm only attending this school for a year or two before attending Weston College like the rest of my family. After all, Ravenclaw sounds quite similar to the Sapphire Owl dormitories, and I happen to like these clothes. Seal replied shortly. Harry Potter, a slimy snake. That'll never happen. Everyone knows Slytherins are evil. I'll be Gryffindor like the rest of my family. Your parents were Gryffindors, you know. What does it matter? They're dead. Seal said to the redhead. I think I'll end up being a Hufflepuff, Neville said, trying to diffuse the tension between the other two males. A young master, I hope you haven't gotten into any trouble. I found Mr. Longbottom's toad. He was hiding near the girls' toilets. Here you are, young sir, Sebastian said, handing off Trevor to a beaming Neville. I heard Harry Potter was in this compartment. Imagine my surprise when I heard it was you. The blonde said, My lord, we are nearing the school. Might I advise dressing in your uniform? Sebastian asked. Go ahead, Seal said before biting the head off of a chocolate frog he had purchased from the food trolley. He wiped his fingers off on a napkin and raised his arms into a T. Seal stared out the window, blankly watching the Scotland countryside fly by blankly. As Sebastian finished tying a black ribbon into a bow around Seal's neck, prefects went around announcing that they were 5 minutes away from arriving. 5 minutes later the pair exited the train and Seal saw Hagrid waving his arms around calling over the first years. "Isn't that the man who broke down my door?" Seal asked Sebastian. "Yes, Bakken, it is. Now shall we get you onto a boat?" Sebastian replied, leading Seal towards a small boat. As there was a total of 45 students, Seal was the odd one out. Not that he minded, in fact he preferred it that way. The pair followed Hagrid's boat and Seal looked at the castle in wonder, letting out a small gasp. Sebastian watched the 11-year-old fondly. This Seal was less guarded, even with all the expectations on his shoulders. Perhaps this contract wouldn't be too bad, but it was dangerous to get close to the contract bearer like this. Sebastian thought as they were signaled to get off the boat. Also to William's angel. "I know they did the memories, but we don't have a very good understanding on what caused Tom to obsess with immortality or power. I mean, we don't even have a good view on Harry's childhood. Dumbledore, we don't have a firm grasp on his character either. All we know is that he and Grindelwald had a fling, but we don't know what really went on with his character either. Their pasts could have been written into novellas like what P.C. Cast did with the House of Night characters. I have insomnia, so you have fun with my spelling errors." Majority voted Black Butler Arc and Ravenclaw. Seal entered the entry hall and looked around unimpressed. The castle was extremely medieval and the hall was drafty. "As soon as we're done here I want to go home. This castle is abhorrent." Seal said, his voice tinged with distaste. "You're in a bad mood today." Sebastian commented, a smirk playing on his lips. "Shut it. You'd be in a bad mood too, if you were practically forced out of duty to come to this drafty castle."
Ciel replie de Sourly.
Bloody mission. If the Queen hadn't sent the letter then, he could have been resting peacefully in the manor. Sleeping, reading, even doing paperwork seemed more favorable to this. "Young master, why can't you just enjoy this experience? You're in a new world full of magic. Imagine all the possibilities." Sebastian said, "We boated here in the middle of the night. I am wet, cold, and hungry. This castle is, as I've said before, drafty, and that blonde reminds me of Aloys." Seal grumbled, gesturing to Draco. "So negative," Sebastian said fondly, ignoring the Bluinette's death glare. Seal was about to give a biting remark, when the witch who had visited them appeared and ushered the group of 11-year-olds plus Sebastian into the great hall. She led the group towards a wooden stool that sat in front of the staff table. Upon that stool rested a ratty brown, stereotypical witch's hat. Seal frowned at the sight of the hat. He highly doubted they expected them to be able to pull a rabbit out of it, but what did they have to do? Seal nearly, but didn't jump in surprise when the ghosts flew in. He ignored their silly prattle and focused on the mystery, on what he had to do. What he wasn't expecting was for, at that moment, the hat developed a rip in the brim and began to sing. "Oh, you may not think me pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, your top hats sleek and tall, for I'm the Hogwarts sorting hat and I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head the sorting hat can't see, so try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring, nerve, and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on. Don't be afraid. And don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm a thinking cap. Wonderful, I get to put a filthy hat atop my head. Maybe Scourgify could work on that filthy thing?" Seal thought to himself. He watched patiently as the deputy headmistress called out the names. He watched as the bushy-haired girl with no manners went to Gryffindor over what looked to be several minutes of arguing. When Finnegan, Seamus walked up, he made eye contact with the nervous boy, and then a slew of memories made themselves known to Seal. A sandy-haired chef had burnt down the kitchen. Bardroy was suggesting the use of a flamethrower to get a picture of Sebastian. telling him to use real bullets on Pluto. The other boy's eyes widened just as the hat shouted Gryffindor. He ignored the next few until he saw the boy with the toad step up. The boy seemed to also be arguing with the hat, as his sorting was taking quite a while. When the hat cried out Gryffindor, Seal was surprised to see that the boy seemed to be upset. His eyes had widened in horror, which most could mistake for joy. But the trembling and the fact that he had paled ever so slight gave away his true feelings. Seal frowned and filed it away for later. Seal watched silently as the rest filed through. The blonde ferret went to Slytherin. The hat hadn't even wanted to touch that arrogant prick. His posture and attitude screamed Slytherin, but his eyes said so much differently. Those slivery blue eyes of his looked like ice. But ice is fragile and only coats over what's hidden beneath it. The Patils were split between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor. Perks went to Gryffindor. Seal smirked inwardly as the hall burst into whispers. Harry Potter did not exist. That person was a fantasy, a silly one at that. A child, not even 2 years, destroyed a Dark Lord. Seal had a feeling that it might have had something to do with a spell classified as dark, or perhaps the phrasing. He still remembered the night vaguely, and knew that there had been pleading and begging. Seal shook himself out of his thoughts and cleared his throat. Harry Potter does not exist. I'm sure I've told you this, Deputy Headmistress. I've told you this as well, Headmaster. I am also quite sure I am in fact named Seal Hadrian Phantomive Potter. Ask the goblins and they. The hall went eerily silent, and then the whispers began once more. Seal strode to the stool calmly and looked at the dirty hat. Pulling out his dual-colored wand, Seal incanted clearly Scourgify, and watched satisfied as the hat lost most of the grime. Seal sighed as he saw that the hat was still dirty, but placed it atop his head, slowly easing it on. He hadn't expected them to have shot him. He hadn't expected to be lying in a pool of his own blood alone. Sebastian had promised not to leave his side and to help him attain his revenge. His butler had failed him, his butler whom he was giving his soul to. Seal drew his face into a bitter smile, not noticing that his blood was forming a pentagram. It was too late though, since the Bluenet had decided to let go of life. Release the piece of rope he had desperately clung on to. It felt nice, like floating or being carried by him. Was his soul that worthless? All this to be abandoned in the middle of nowhere. Seal gave a bitter laugh, choking on his own blood. To finally know who, but never get the chance to see them die. His vision blurred further, and Seal heard loud footsteps and saw a large black shadow move towards him quickly. Seal's eyes widened in surprise as he saw that the shadow had been Sebastian. He shuddered slightly, coughing up more blood. Bakken, Sebastian had said. The butler's voice sounded panicky. Seal could feel his eyelids weighing down on him and ignored his butler's pleas to stay awake. Why would he want to do that when it seemed much nicer to fall asleep? The 15-year-old let his eyes flutter shut and felt the pain to leave quickly. All he felt now was a slight pain in his side. How annoying. The last thing Seal had heard was his butler's panicked voice shouting at him to stay awake. Not to die and to live. But what did he have to live for? His family was dead. Elizabeth was out of the country, and it wouldn't really make a difference living though this or not. His last regret would probably be not seeing Ashangela dying. Seal exhaled once more before becoming no more. I was not expecting that. The hat said, its voice quavering. Could you tell me why Longbottom seemed so upset about going to Gryffindor? Seal asked, wondering if the hat would have any information that could be helpful to his case. No can do, kid. Strictly confidential. Although I can tell you this much. Quod contortum tellum contexere vobis juvens comes.
Semper maledictis confutatis maledictis iam perdere et iterum caris in metus cursus.
Ut respice in futuro in praeteritum. The hat replied, Latin, and here I thought Sebastian's lessons were useless. Now where will you place me? I believe we've been at this for 10 minutes.
Ciel commentait Drilly.
Ravenclaw, Slytherin fits you the best, but you need to be able to research without anyone being suspicious. Slytherin will also make you untrustworthy, and that would probably hinder your search. Seeing as you're only staying for a short period of time, I suppose you better be Ravenclaw. The hat said, shouting out the last word for the hall to hear. Seal calmly took off the hat and strode towards the Ravenclaw table, ignoring the applause, and sat beside a boy named Anthony Goldstein. Tuning out the boy's irritating chatter, Seal turned to Sebastian and said, "Quod contortum tellum contexere vobis juvens comes.
Semper maledictis confutatis maledictis iam perdere et iterum caris in metus cursus.
Ut respice in futuro in praeteritum." How interesting.
Neniga motsureta webu anata ori akai no hakushaku. Eyen nikako o kurikae sun mei tomugen no saikurude. Anata no aisuru mono o usinau koto ni noroba. Mirai ni miru teim ni, kako ni mite.
Sebastian replied in Japanese. Seal raised an eyebrow and turned his attention back to the sorting ceremony. He watched as the red-headed imbecile joined the cannon fodder heir Gryffindors. Seal snorted as several other redheads swarmed him and turned his attention to the staff table. There he saw a Severus Snape talking to another man. The other man was wearing a top hat and the brim covered his eyes. Seal couldn't make out a specific hair color, but it looked to be blonde, and both of their robes were pitch black. Seal turned to the fifth-year Ravenclaw prefect and asked, "Who's the one talking to Professor Snape?" "Oh, that's the new defense against the dark arts professor, Professor Thanatos," she replied calmly. Seal nodded his head in acknowledgement before turning back to Sebastian. "Will you tell me what the hat said in English, or are you going to speak Pig Latin next?" Seal asked, tugging at the black ribbon's ends, causing it to become undone. "Here I thought it would be more cryptic, but seeing as I barely remember my previous life, it could be puzzling." Seal commented as Dumbledore said nitwit, blubber, oddment and tweak. "You would, wouldn't you?" Sebastian replied as the golden dishes filled with all sorts of different foods. Seal looked at the platters blankly, not joining the other first years, with their looks of awe. The food looked greasy. After the years of abuse he had suffered, foods like that wouldn't sit well with his stomach. Sebastian had fed him greasy fare during their first month together, and he doubted the demon had enjoyed cleaning up the mess he had made. Seal looked at the food Sebastian had placed on his plate and said, "Here I thought that this institution would hold more, what's the word, yes, refined food. Bakken, it's only for the year. Enjoy your time. Join a sports team, make friends." Sebastian said, "I have asthma, you fool. Why on earth would I play sports?" Seal asked incredulously. "That carried over as well, how unfortunate." Sebastian sighed. "It seems dinner is over." Seal commented, seeing Dumbledore stand up and conduct the school song. It was possibly one of the worst things he's ever heard. Well, if you discount the time Dudley and his gang attempted to be a band, and that had killed one of Mrs. Fig's cats. The poor thing had a hemorrhage and died, hearing Dudley attempt to sing while pounding away at the drums. Seal was glad that he didn't have sensitive hearing like animals and demons did. If he had, then Petunia's screeching would have killed him long ago. Seal mused as the prefect led them towards the Ravenclaw dorms. The eagle knocker asked a riddle which was quickly answered, and the door melted out of existence before their eyes. Stepping into the room, Seal took in the sights, from the creamy pillars to the sky mosaic on the domed ceiling. Seal listened calmly as the prefects told them that they would each receive their own room, since previous years had each added a charm to the dormitories, creating a magically expanded tower. Each room held its own secrets in Ravenclaw Tower, and it was tradition to add your own during your stay or before you graduate Hogwarts. Seal walked up the stairs and down the hall towards the one room with a plain door. His other year mates had scrambled for the most elaborate and extravagant doors. After all, the ones that looked the most unassuming always held the best secrets. Seal thought to himself, turning the brass doorknob slowly. Pushing open the door, Seal saw a plain and unassuming room. The bed was a twin, a small window, the paint was peeling, cheaply made toiletries, and the fireplace was brick. There was also a slender bookshelf which was empty. Seal's lip curled upwards, and he said, "Sebastian, you wouldn't happen to know where the switch for this room is, would you? What kind of butler would I be if I couldn't find a hidden switch?" Sebastian replied before heading straight for the bookshelf. "Where is it?" Sebastian muttered to himself, gently rapping the panels with his knuckles before hearing a small snick sound. "Here it is," Sebastian said, watching as the room expanded. The faded wallpaper turned to a light sky blue. The bed turned to a king-sized canopy and had cream bed sheets accented with blue. The fireplace had turned to marble, and in front of it sat 3 cream-colored couches and a coffee table. The walls had multiple bookshelves full of books, and the windows were now large and held expensive draperies done in cream. The room's bathroom was marble, and there was a walk-in closet connected through it. In the corner of the room sat a desk which only made sense seeing as he was a student. From the ceiling hung a crystal chandelier, and Seal gave a satisfied smirk. The plain, unassuming door had turned into a white door with stained glass that featured multiple images. There was a lightning bolt, a raven, a stag, the family crests, a white rabbit in a suit carrying a pocket watch, and the contract seal. Seal fell into the bed, exhausted, after Sebastian undressed him. Before falling into the arms of Morpheus, Seal wondered why Professor Thanatos looked so familiar. November 10, 2013. There, look. Where? Next to the hot guy in the muggle suit. Wearing the eye patch. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Did you see his butler? Who cares, the boy who lived is cute too. He's 11, much too young. I can hope. Shoo. They're looking in our direction. Whispers followed the duo as they walked through the school. Much to Seal's irritation and Sebastian's amusement. Seal wished they wouldn't. He already didn't want to be here. He had wanted Ravenclaw, thinking it would be easier to blend in. Clearly the label of boy who lived would prevent him from blending in. With 142 staircases that were constantly changing paths, it would have been next to impossible to get to class on time if it hadn't been for Sebastian. Seal had nearly fallen through some of the disappearing steps, run into a couple of doors, and doors that weren't doors but walls. Confused Seal to no end. Honestly, how on earth could a wall just pretend to be a door? At times like these, Seal missed his manor. The cozy Victorian style. The gardens, the sleeping in. Thinking back, it was a good thing he had procrastinated on reviving the Funtom Company. Seal had seen other students being harassed by the resident poltergeist Peeves, but the mischievous spirit seemed to avoid him. Probably Sebastian's doing. Seal despised the disgusting caretaker, with his matted and filthy hair, the dirty and fraying robes, the way he sneered, and worst of all, his horrible familiar. That damned cat, Mrs. Norris. Oh, how he wanted to give it a good kick. Don't you dare, you cat-obsessed moron, Seal had nearly shouted. He had seen Sebastian eyeing the cat on top of the professor's desk. He didn't want to have to explain to the deputy headmistress on why her cat was being assaulted by his butler. But she's so cute. And fluffy. Sebastian pouted, giving Seal the look he had given the woman in the nunnery during the late 1800s. I am not going to explain to my professor on why her cat has been molested, Seal said, looking at his butler blankly. Seal swore he saw the cat grin, but wasn't sure if that was possible. At that moment, the Gryffindors and most of the others started to file in. It seemed as if several of the students had gotten lost, seeing as their uniforms were rumpled or their faces were flushed a brilliant red. A few minutes after most of the class entered the red-headed boy, Weasley ran in with a brunette. Phew! Imagine if McGonagall was here, the redhead said. I know, we'd be goners if we were late, the other boy said, wiping his sweaty forehead. Yes, imagine if I was here, the Transfiguration professor said. Riley. Seal stared in shock. The cat had just turned into his professor. Utter madness. Mr. Weasley, Mr. Thomas, to your seats if you please. Seal smirked inwardly when he saw Weasley try to approach him before walking away towards a seat near the back dejectedly. As the Ravenclaws and Granger were occupying the front desks, their task for the day was to transfigure a matchstick into a needle. Simple enough, seeing as Sebastian had tutored him in this subject. Bakken, you have to focus more and visualize the result you want. You can't just wave your wand around and wait for it to change, Sebastian said. Fine. Seal huffed before imagining a slender silver needle that had the Phantom Hive crest engraved on the side. Really, Bakken? I don't think it's necessary to put the family's crest on the needle, Sebastian said wryly, before picking up the needle and examining it. Wonderful work, Mr. Potter. Look here, class. Mr. Potter has successfully transfigured his matchstick into a needle. 10 points to Ravenclaw. This Phantom Hive Potter, if you really want to call me a Potter. I'd rather drop it all together, but I suppose I do need something to be connected to my parents by, Seal said in a blasé fashion. Minerva looked at Seal in shock, before telling the rest of the class to go back to work. At the end of class, the only other person to make progress was the bushy-haired girl Granger. She had only made the match silver and pointy, but it didn't have the texture or shine of a real needle. Seal was highly amused by the death glares that the girl was giving him. If she cared so much about academics, then she should have been in Ravenclaw. Hey Potter, can you hear me? You weren't responding, so I was wondering if you have hearing problems. First of all, it's Phantom Hive, not Potter. Potter symbolizes a weak, helpless child that I've done everything to leave behind. I believe I said something similar to this in Transfiguration. Clearly you weren't listening. Secondly, I do not appreciate having balls of parchment thrown at me every few minutes. Also, I do not have hearing issues. Seeing as this is a classroom, I am waiting for the teacher to start the lesson. If you want to talk, then do find a moment when I'm free.
Ciel replied coldly.
So when will you be free? Ronald asked. Next year. Unlike you, I have a family company to revive. I also do the occasional favor to the Queen, so please wait to be scheduled in. Also, please do brush your teeth or use mouthwash. Your breath smells terrible. Seal replied, wondering how many shades of red Ronald could become. Bakken, do try to be polite. Imagine if this was the Marquis Midford or the Viscount of Drut. Sebastian reprimanded. The Marquis of Midford's daughter is attending next year as she is currently 10, and I wouldn't bother with the Viscount of Drut. He's a bloody pain in the arse. He can't seem to take the hint that he wasn't invited, but knew he just has to interrupt afternoon tea with the Marquis daughter and I.
Ciel sulked.
Language Bakken. Sebastian replied automatically. 5 points from Gryffindor for being out of your seat, Weasley. The professor said, seeing Ronald still standing in front of Seal. You are here to learn the subtle art of potions. I can teach you to brew cures, even stop her death. If you aren't a bunch of dunderheads, which I usually have to teach. The professor said, sneering the last part. Seal looked at his year mates in amusement. Granger and the other Ravenclaws were sitting up ramrod straight, and had this look in their eyes that just screamed, I'm not a dunderhead. I swear I'm not. How pathetic. Draft of living death.
Ciel replied.
Sebastian had drilled into him several different potion types into his head months ago. Severus frowned before asking, where would I find a bezoar? Stomach of a goat. 2 ingredients from polyjuice potion. Boomslang skin, and a piece of the person you're becoming. He barely resembles that menace. This Potter truly is a Phantom Hive, from what he had found on them. Ill-tempered, crafty, manipulative, intelligent, and that butler. He had seen old photos of the first Seal Phantom Hive, well, just one, seeing as the home had burnt down a second time, but in the wreckage there had been a single photo left. It had been of the boy sleeping at his desk. His butler stood right behind the chair, looking exactly like the butler that stood stonily by the current Seal's chair. In the background was this weird naked man, but that was unimportant. That butler was clearly not human, so what could he be? Who knew that those horrible lessons of yours would actually be useful? First Latin and now advanced potions. Next you'll be telling me that divination and care of magical creatures are incredibly important. Seal said while stirring his potion a few times, trying to change it from lilac to a light shade of blue. Not quite sky, but a few shades lighter. You never know, Bakken. And add a pinch more of ground snake fangs, or else the coloring will be a few shades off. Sebastian said, examining the potion. With a sigh, Seal added a small amount of snake fangs before stirring the cauldron once more, before looking on satisfied as the potion changed the correct shade of blue and gave off a pink steam. Scooping a small amount of potion into a crystal vial, he strode up to Professor Snape and deposited the vial there before heading back to his seat. What was the point of him asking all of those questions earlier, Sebastian? Seal asked, watching the darkly clothed professor analyze the potion. As a potions master, he has to know the use and properties of each plant he's using. Perhaps he decided to learn the language of flowers. After all, asphodel is a type of lily that means I will carry my regrets to my grave, while wormwood is bitter or absence. Now, if you place each meaning properly, you have a sentence. What he was communicating to you is this: I bitterly regret Lily's death, who, if I'm correct, is your late mother with whom he went to school with. Sebastian replied right as Neville's cauldron exploded, dousing him in a gooey orange substance. Stupid boy. Weasley, why didn't you do anything? Take him to the hospital wing and 10 points off Gryffindor each. Severus snapped. Well, that was interesting. Seal commented drily as he disassembled the potions cauldron and put everything back. He used to complain about cleaning up the potion set. After all, Sebastian was his butler. But Sebastian had said you need to be able to construct a basic cauldron for exams. I won't be allowed in the room, you know. Seal had grumbled mutinously when he was told this but knew that Sebastian was right. What Seal wanted to know was, when had he become so incompetent at basic things? He couldn't even button up his shirts properly anymore. Bakken, you have class today. Sebastian told the young boy exasperatedly. It's Halloween, you know how I feel about today. Seal replied, burying into the blankets even deeper. That's no excuse to miss class, young master. Now let's let some light in. Shall we? Sebastian said before opening the curtains to Seal's room. He then ripped the covers off Seal, who instantly curled up into a fetal position and covered his head with a pillow. Honestly, Bakken, how are you ever going to accomplish anything when you're like this? You haven't even made any progress in your case. Sebastian scolded. Well, nothing suspicious has happened besides there being a new defense against the dark arts teacher each year. In fact, they don't even seem to notice that the person missing fell off the face of the earth. The queen only knew because the family had written to her. Seal sighed, getting out of the warm and comfortable bed. I asked all of the Ravenclaws, the Hufflepuffs, most of the Gryffindors, and the Slytherins won't talk to me. There are no leads whatsoever on the teens that have gone missing. I searched up the registry, and each year always ends with one less student than what started with. It's gone on for about 2 years. There's also a pattern. Seal replied, sipping the steaming drink. Only Gryffindor first years have gone missing, but the first one to disappear would be Derek Arden. He would have been a 7th year, meaning he had gone missing in 5th. None of the students I've talked have a single memory about him, just a hole in their memory. We'll need to look at his student files if we want to get any further. Seal added on. How interesting. Would you like for me to perform a background check on the professors? Sebastian asked. Yes, and I guess it's time for class. Seal sighed as Sebastian dressed him once more, tying a blue ribbon with a thin bronze strip running down the middle around his neck. The spell we're learning today is Wingardium Leviosa. The motion is swish and flick. Flitwick said, demonstrating the spell on Trevor, Neville's toad. Seal watched bored as the toad was levitated around the room at breakneck speed. When Flitwick ended the spell, Trevor landed on the desk webbed feet first, before spitting up a gooey green mucus. So frogs can get motion sick, good to know. Maybe they'll work on warding off the current Viscount Drut. Wingardium Leviosa. Seal intoned and watched as the feather began to drift higher and higher. Seal barely refrained from rolling his eyes and looked around the classroom. He almost choked as he saw Seamus Finnegan set his feather on fire. How on earth did he manage that? Of course, that barely measured up to Weasley's and Granger's blow-up. It's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa. Also make sure the gar in Wingardium is nice and long. Well, let's see you do it if you're so smart. As he walked to his next class, he heard the tactless redhead go on about how annoying the girl was. Of course, she happened to have been walking behind him at that moment and shoved past, running for the washroom. Seal shoved those thoughts aside, having set his case as top priority and not weepy girls. Points for trying, as they say. Seal headed straight for the school yearbooks. Students weren't allowed near the archives, but the yearbooks contained pictures of the staff and students. As Seal opened the 1989 and saw a picture of a cocky Derek Arden, wearing Gryffindor Quidditch robes. After the last week of May, there seemed to be no more pictures of him. The staffing of that year held all the same teachers, but the defense against the dark arts professor and the divination teacher. The divination professor was none other than Professor Thanatos, and the previous Dada professor. These disappearances all started with that one mysterious teacher. Or so it seemed. After all, why did he always wear that hat? No one had ever seen the professor's eyes, strangely enough. Seal gave a sigh as he flipped the book shut. The pieces were there, but no evidence, or clues that could further his investigation. All of a sudden Seal heard a shriek in fury. Seal dashed down the hall looking for a safe place that was close. Sebastian had gone into the archives deep underneath the school. Even with his hearing, the screams would never reach him. All of a sudden Seal crashed into a sandy-haired Gryffindor. You have to help me find Hermione. There are inferi in the castle. She doesn't know, and I'm afraid they'll get her. She wasn't in the Great Hall during dinner, and I was just headed to the library to see if she was there. Why aren't you in Ravenclaw Tower like you usually are? Seamus Finnegan said in a rush, peering around nervously. I was just in the library when I heard the screams. I was headed to a room that would be safer to stay in. She wasn't in there, I was the only student in there. Seal said, pulling out his wand. Will you help me find her though? Seamus asked. Don't weepy girls cry in the loo? Seal asked. The charms classroom. Seamus said before freezing. At the end of the hall was a small cluster of inferi shuffling towards them. Quick into the girls' loo. We'll stand a better chance if all three of us are together. Seal hissed, dragging the terrified Gryffindor into the restroom. What are you doing in here? You're boys. Hermione shrieked, her hair a mess and eyes red and puffy. I think we know our own sexuality. But it just so happens that there are some inferi in this hallway, and we thought that someone should come and tell the Gryffindor girl that's crying because a jealous prick decided to insult her. Why, if you had just hexed or slapped him instead of staying in here and crying, we wouldn't be here. Seal hissed, eyes flashing. Wait, inferi. What are those? Hermione asked. She's a muggle-born. Earl, she wouldn't learn about them till 7th year. They're reanimated corpses. The necromancer who creates them gives them a purpose, which is usually to kill anyone in sight. Me mum told me that they were used a lot in the war. Seamus said. What? Hermione shrieked, her back against the washroom wall, eyes wide and fearful. Shut up. They can hear and smell us. They may not be able to see very well, but they can scent us. Keep still and press yourself up against the wall. Use the spell Incendio on them. Inferis can be destroyed by fire. Seal hissed, dragging Seamus to the wall. Alalricht. Hermione said, voice quavering. At that moment they heard rustling outside the door and a scraping noise. The scraping began to escalate to banging when the washroom door fell to the floor in front of them. Hermione had started hyperventilating. Seamus shrieked and Seal's eyes burned at the sight and smell of the inferi. They smelt of rotten fruit and their skin was gray. The inferis shuffled forwards, all at different stages of decomposition. One had no eyes and its neck had dried blood crusted on its neck. Another had half of its arm rotted away and was missing a foot. On its scalp was a small clump of stringy brown hair, the rest seemed to have fallen out. Each as terrible as the last. Incendio! Seamus and Seal shouted together, red-hot flames shooting out from their wands. Seamus' fire roared, burning hot and larger than Seal's. I incendio! Hermione incanted as well, adding a more controlled jet of flame to the onslaught. Seal began to sink towards the ground, unable to keep up the flames for much longer. Seamus and Hermione seemed to be in the same condition as well. They had burnt most of the inferi to a crisp, but they kept coming. Sebastian, I order you to come right now. Seal gasped out before his wand stopped shooting out flame. Seal's knees buckled and the young Ravenclaw fell to the floor, his eyes fluttering shut. He saw a dark shadowy shape that said, I leave you one time and look at the mess you're in. Honestly, Bakken, sometimes I wonder if you enjoy being in perilous positions. When Seal heard the silky baritone of his butler, he finally allowed himself to fall into blissful unconsciousness. When Seal opened his eyes, he was met with blinding white walls. Seal instantly reached to check if his eye patch was on and sighed in relief as he felt the smooth fabric. Heaving himself off the bed, Seal stumbled slightly and tilted precariously to the side. What on earth are you doing, boy? Madame Pomfrey screeched, seeing her charge trying to stumble out of the hospital wing. Need to find Sebastian, have morning tea.
Ciel mumbled.
Honestly, your butler is fine, and you can have the elves serve you tea. Madame Pomfrey huffed before shooing Seal back into the bed. I have a policy not to trust food from those I don't know or trust. Especially with wizards, it's disgustingly easy for food to be laced with potion. Seal said coolly before brightening at the sight of Sebastian entering with a tray full of scones and tea. A green tea blend today, Bakken. Sebastian said before handing Seal the china cup. So what happened? Seal asked. Seal peered around the room and finally noticed the other two 11-year-olds resting in hospital beds. He hadn't noticed them. Mr. Potter, I'd like to congratulate you on defending your fellow schoolmates. A cheery voice called out before waltzing into the room. Seal paled at the ghastly sight of the headmaster in bright salmon robes that had animated flying mint bunnies all over it. It's Phantom Hive before Potter. Phantom Hive is of higher ranking, therefore if you use the Potter name you would have to say Phantom Hive Potter instead of just one. Seal said coldly, eyes narrowed at the colorful monstrosity before him. What a truly terrible sight. My apologies, Mr. Potter. Dumbledore replied, carrying on just as cheerily as before. Seal's eyebrow twitched in irritation at the jovial and clearly delusional man before him chattered about how the hat should have placed him in Gryffindor after that show of bravery, and how his parents would be so proud of him. I'm in Ravenclaw for a reason, headmaster. Also, I wouldn't know if my parents would be proud or not, seeing as they're dead. Seal replied. The headmaster frowned at that, but quickly put his whimsical mask back on. I will regretfully have to take off 10 points from each of you individually for endangering yourselves, but you did show immense bravery in the face of danger. 20 points to Ravenclaw and 20 points to Ms. Granger and Mr. Finnegan. Dumbledore said with a smile. Sebastian, help me to my room, all of this white is getting to me. Seal said, turning to his butler. Sebastian picked the bluinet up bridal style, causing the boy to squawk indignantly. I said to help me, not carry me like a child. Now set me down. I can walk just fine. Seal growled, causing the other two first-years to wake up. Ah, they look so cute. Hermione gushed. I guess. Seamus said, giving Seal a cheeky grin, clearly saying he found Seal's position highly amusing. Bakken, you're ill, honestly you're so troublesome, always getting into the most precarious situations. Come now, off to bed and no sweets. Sebastian said, reprimanding the bluinet with a smirk playing on his lips. I am not a child. Seal scowled as Sebastian carried him down the empty corridor. You're 11, in the eyes of society you are a child. Sebastian said drily. I am the Earl of Phantomhive and Lord Potter, do those titles mean nothing?
Ciel groaned.
Until you're of age you won't be taken seriously, Bakken. It's the way the world works, wizarding and muggle. Sebastian said before tapping the bronze knocker in front of the Ravenclaw dorms lightly. What occurs once in a minute, twice in a moment, and never in 1,000 years? The knocker asked. The letter M. Seal said and watched as the door melted away. November 26, 2013. You have flying lessons then herbology today, Bakken. Sebastian said, going about their regular morning routine. Flying with who? Seal asked. They're putting Gryffindor and Ravenclaw together. Then the Hufflepuffs and Slytherins. Sebastian said as he buttoned up Seal's shirt. Wonderful, I'm stuck with those imbecilic children once again. I don't believe that it's normal for two houses to have so many classes together.
Ciel complained.
Most likely Dumbledore's doing. Sebastian replied calmly. Lovely, I think I'll spend the day in the library, seeing as flying doesn't start till noon. Seal said as they walked out of the dormitories. Have you found any more leads on the case? Sebastian murmured as they walked through the halls. No, but I feel that I'm missing something. None of the students know anything, and the teachers know nothing as well. Seal huffed in displeasure. Oh dear, it seems as this hallway has been blocked off due to repairs. It seems we'll need to go through the Great Hall. Sebastian said as they stopped in front of the closed-off staircase. The wood was splintered and the staircase was stopped in mid-rotation. As the duo entered the library, they heard a sob come from the back of the library. Curious, Seal headed to the back and saw Seamus Finnegan with his head between his knees and shoulders shaking. His face was red and streaked with tears, and clutched tightly in his hands was a crumpled piece of parchment. May I ask what's wrong? Seal asked after fidgeting for several minutes. He had hoped that Seamus would have taken notice. Oh Seal, it's terrible me mum. She was hit by a muggle car. She died on impact. Seamus wailed. The librarian just gave a sympathetic look and turned back to her work. What about your father? Seal asked. Seal exchanged a look with Sebastian. Receiving a nod in return, Seal made up his decision. Ere you could come live in my manor, I suppose. We've been. Seal was cut off by a pair of arms squeezing him tightly. Sebastian's eyes widened slightly, seeing the boy's performance in classes. Well, let's just say the manor would once again be rocked by explosions. At least they had someone that could be trained to protect the manor when they were on a mission. Would you mind letting me go now? Class starts soon and I'm finding it difficult to breathe.
Ciel gasped.
All right, sorry. Seamus said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. His eyes still red and puffy. Excuse me, my lord, but class begins in 5 minutes on the Quidditch pitch. Sebastian said. All right, well, best be off. I'll be seeing you later, Finnegan. Seal said before pivoting on his heel and marching off to the Quidditch pitch. Seal stepped onto the pitch and felt the autumn breeze ruffle his silky blue strands. He listened to Madame Hooch's instructions and stared blankly at the broom in front of him and thought up. He figured that Sebastian might as well try to dig up more information seeing as they'd hit a dead end in their investigation. After all, what good would it do to have Sebastian here? The broom flew up and into his hand. With a satisfied smirk, Seal observed the other students. The red-headed boy, Ronald Weasley, was currently having a staring contest with his broom, shouting up every few minutes. All it really did was roll from side to side. Only Malfoy, Finnegan, and 2 other people were able to get their broom to rise. Longbottoms didn't move at all. Of course, he seemed to be unwilling to leave the ground. "Now mount your brooms like so," Madame Hooch said. Seal did so and smirked slightly at the fact that both Weasley and Malfoy had been mounting their brooms wrong. Serves those annoying pricks for being so bloody irritating. Seal gave a huff before starting at the piercing shriek Longbottom gave as the broom he was on flew upwards in a jerky fashion. Seal blinked twice before giving a slight wince at the snapping sound. Ouch! Longbottom must have landed badly on his wrist. Seal watched quietly as the professor escorted Longbottom to the hospital wing before listening to the ongoing argument the Slytherins and Gryffindors were having. "Haha! Look at Longbottom, he fell right on his fat arse." Malfoy cackled gleefully. "Joy, another Aloy's trancy." "Oh, shut it, Malfoy," Weasley snapped back. Now children, let's behave civilly, we don't want to look a bunch of miscreants." Seal said calmly. "Can you repeat that in English?" Weasley asked. "That was English. You have more money than brains, Weasley, and that's saying something." Malfoy said snarkily. "Well, if you're so smart, then what'll you do about this?" Malfoy said as he flung Longbottom's Remember-All in the air. Seal watched unamused as Weasley chased after the ball unsuccessfully before incanting Accio. In a clear voice, the magical trinket flew straight into Seal's hand, and Seal looked at the orb in confusion. It had been clear while being summoned, but now it was clouded by a gold smoke. The same had happened when Malfoy had held it. "Hold this for a second, I want to test something," Seal said, turning to Seamus, and deposited the trinket in the Gryffindor's hands. The orb stayed the same clouded gold. "That's weird. I have no idea what I could be forgetting. And the color's all wrong too," Seamus said thoughtfully. "Interesting," Seal murmured before placing the orb into Anthony Goldstein's hands. The sphere immediately cleared of the gold smoke. "It doesn't seem broken, see," Anthony said before placing it into Michael Corner's hands and watched as it filled with red smoke. "What did I forget?" Michael yelped, rummaging through his book bag, panicked. "Oh no, my herbology gloves. You left your herbology gloves on your nightstand." "Don't worry, I have them here," Anthony said before passing the gloves to his dorm mate. "I'm back. And I see that you all behaved yourselves, no danger stunts either. Now mount your brooms and on the whistle push off the ground," Madame Hooch ordered. Seal quickly pocketed the trinket before turning back to the hawk-eyed woman. Eyes like those were probably from brewing the animagus potion incorrectly. 1, 2, 3, push. Seal pushed his feet off the ground, shooting into the air like the others. Seal smiled softly as the wind tousled his hair and drifted above the clouds, watching the others. He gave a snicker as he saw Malfoy and Weasley having a competition on who was the better flyer. Seal didn't know who to root for as the pair started doing twirls and dives. Ouch! Weasley just collided with the wall. Looks like Madame Hooch had to escort another student to the hospital wing. Seal flew down in a corkscrew spiral before pulling up sharply and slowed to a stop as everyone else drifted down slowly, if you discounted Malfoy, who was already on the field crying tears of laughter. "Mr. Potter, I said no dangerous stunts," Madame Hooch screeched. "That was hardly dangerous. In fact, I have full confidence that I would have escaped unscathed no matter what, and honestly it's Phantom Hive. It's of higher social standing than Potter, therefore I'm supposed to be referred to as Mr. Phantom Hive Potter if you really want to add Potter into that." Seal said blankly he had gotten far too used to being referred to as Harry or Potter. Neither was really true, considering the fact that Harry wasn't even his middle name, and who refers to someone by their middle name's nickname anyways? Mr. Phantom Hive. That was amazing. You must join the Ravenclaw's Quidditch team, Professor Flitwick said, running as fast his legs could carry him. "Hello, Professor, how did you see that?" "Ravenclaw Towers, on the other side of the castle," Seal asked curiously. "I was in Minerva's office, She always picks the one that has the best view of the first year's flying lessons. Flitwick replied, interesting, and I'll have to think on it. Seal said before flicking his wand, sending it back to the rack. Pivoting on his foot, Seal walking towards the greenhouses. Oh, it appears to be time for the next class. Flitwick said, checking his watch before scurrying off towards the charms room. Quidditch sounds stupider than cricket. Honestly, having two balls that can kill you flying around in the air, trying to knock you off your broom when you're a couple 100 feet on the air.
Ciel scold.
Come now, Bakken, it's a sport that is well loved by the wizarding world, and I heard that the MVP gets a special luncheon with the elusive Professor Thanatos off school grounds. A regular first year and a prefect is chosen. Sebastian said, why only 3 people? Well, 4 if you think about it. Why so specific as well? Seal asked curiously. We shall see, Bakken, but for now your best chance of being selected is through Quidditch. Sebastian said as he poured Seal a cup of tea. It's only 7 months, and then we can go home to the manor. Don't forget to teach Seamus his duties. Seal sighed as he stared at the tea resting undisrupted in his cup. So smooth and simple, no unnecessary ripples, and everything was blended smoothly. No missing pieces, just at peace. Receiving his past memories had been nice. The gold smoke probably meant reincarnated souls. After all, the only time the remember-all filled with smoke was if you forgot something, and he supposed that losing your past life's memories counted under that category as well. But that trinket had to have more functions than that, didn't it? What good does it do if it tells you that you're forgetting something, but not what you're forgetting? Seal gave another sigh as he examined the orb. He would give it back to Longbottom later, but for now it would serve as a reminder. Was Malfoy a reincarnation of Aloys Trancy or of someone else, though? The gold smoke had filled the orb for him and Finnegan. Finnegan, who was so similar to Bardroy, and Malfoy, who had a few similarities to Aloys as well. Sometimes he wondered what would happen after all this was over and done with. After all the schooling would be nearly a full year of being unable to investigate and get revenge. Of course, it also meant 1 more year of being able to stay alive. Right, optimism, yippee. That Dada professor was oddly familiar, something niggling at the back of his mind telling him that he should know. Sebastian seemed unable to talk to the man, meaning that he was able to outrun the demon. He knew it was possible for wizards to apparate, but it's impossible inside the castle. The man never spoke in classes either. He simply wrote on the board and flicked his wand every few minutes to get the chalk to write another question. A canute for your thoughts. Bakken? Sebastian asked. Make it a treacle tart and you've got yourself a deal. Seal said with a wry smile. Of course, Bakken. Sebastian said before leaving Seal to his thoughts. It was late November, so Ravenclaw had to be doing terribly if they were asking for a first year to play. He supposed it couldn't be too bad. He would just have to excel and use some dirty tricks. After all, he was still fairly light, as it had only been a bit over a year since the years of malnutrition. He wouldn't be able to gain a lot over a year, but over time he should be in near perfect health. The asthma he had developed from being stuck in that hellhole for a few months would probably stay with him for the rest of his life. Perhaps if he was to break the trinket, the smoke could unlock the rest of his memories? He couldn't break this, though. It was Longbottom's, and the Gryffindors would hold it against him for smashing the object. I am back with your tart, young master, Sebastian said as he walked into the room. Sebastian, order one of these through Owl Post. I want to see its full potential. Seal said as he twirled the silver fork in his hand, looking at the artfully garnished treat. Of course, Bakken. I will do so as soon as possible, Sebastian said before once again leaving Seal to his thoughts. Seal began to roam the school grounds, wrinkling his nose slightly as large clumps of snowflakes landed on his nose, causing it to twitch. Ciel! Wait up! I've been looking for you. Finnegan gasped as he ran after the blueonette. Oh, it's you, Seal said as he turned around to face the sandy blonde. Do you know what the gold smoke in the remember-all meant? I've asked others, but they didn't know. I've asked everyone but Snape, Thanatos, and Professor Dumbledore. Seamus said, it means you are a reincarnated soul. Seal settled on. He figured that if he told the boy the truth it couldn't hurt. But isn't everyone a reincarnated soul or something? Seamus asked. Well, yes, but I'm sure there's more to it. I'll let you know if I find out more. Now tell me, have you been having any strange dreams? Perhaps of events that you don't remember experiencing? Seal asked. Well, I had this strange one of being in this manner. I was cooking in the kitchen using a flamethrower on something, when suddenly the kitchen exploded. Then a butler that looked similar to Sebastian walked in and told me he'd handle preparations. Bloody show-off. Whatever I cooked was great. You just had to peel off the extra crispy shell. Seamus huffed. Seal had to stifle a snort there. This was most definitely Bardroy. The American accent may be gone, but the attitude was still there. Is that so? Well, you'll be coming to the manor during winter and summer break. Try to refrain from completely obliterating my kitchen. I only have 2. Seal said. Why do you have 2 kitchens? Seamus asked, flabbergasted. Apparently back in the late 1800s, the previous Seal Phantom Hive's chef was terrible and had a separate kitchen for him to cook in. The second kitchen was used by the butler to create meals. Perhaps my manor's the one from your dreams. Seal said, already knowing it was. Best not to reveal how much he knew. I apologize for this being late. I have 4 projects and had several rehearsals to prepare for the Christmas concert. It's snowing like crazy where I live. Hopefully it knocks out the power lines in my school's area, which would be nice. Anyways, could you tell me if and where I killed the Dursleys? I can't seem to recall when and where. Any questions or requests? The title's gilded amnesia because they've forgotten their past lives, and from those people the orb turned gold. Just in case you didn't get the title. As you can see, the canon of Harry Potter Book 1 is over, since after this it goes into the whole Philosopher's Stone spiel. This arc only has about 3 chapters left. I'll have a summer arc before starting year 2. Any errors and typos please point out. Expect my next update from the 25th, Jan 6th or something. I am a student. Happy birthday, Tom Marvolo Riddle. Also happy holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, and every other holiday that takes place. Oh, and let's not forget New Year's. I'm so happy. I got Kuroshitsuji for Christmas. Also, I have another plan for Ginny. Even though she'd make a decent Mayrin, I wanted to try a different angle. Seal stared forlornly out the window. So much snow, but at least he was going home in a few days. He and Sebastian had agreed that the case had reached a dead end and that he'd have to wait till May to get further in the case. Finnegan didn't require as much paperwork as he had thought. Since he was a half-blood and was burnt off the family tapestry, the ministry didn't care. Since his mother was the one with custody, she hadn't registered Seamus into the Muggle government. Seal had been dragged down to breakfast by Finnegan. He had been flipping through spell books in the library when out of nowhere Seamus had run in and dragged him towards the Gryffindor table. You do know that I've already eaten, and that I'm a Ravenclaw, right? Seal asked with a sigh. But it's Christmas time, where's your spirit? Seamus asked. In cinders. It burnt down right with my past lives' cheer. Seal replied, eyes dark. It was December 14th. Horrible things always tended to happen to him on this day. When he lived in the 1800s, that is, this lifetime, it seemed that October 31st hated him. Seamus said, at a loss for words. Seal couldn't blame him. His response did create a rather awkward break in their conversation. Not that Seal actually wanted to converse with the boy, but for the sake of being polite he was down here. They may be similar in appearance, but their personality was debatable. They may be bratty. However, Draco hadn't caused anyone bodily harm, preferring to break others' self-esteem. Perhaps Draco was someone else that played a small, insignificant part in his life, maybe the Italian mafia boss, or perhaps he crossed Draco in Weston College. After all, there were quite a few students there. Hey Seal, look at that owl. It's a snowy. I heard they're extremely expensive birds. Seamus said, tugging on Seal's sleeve. Hello? Is that letter for me? Seal asked, looking at the letter tied to the owl's leg with a navy blue ribbon. Oh, it's from her, is it? Seal asked, seeing the Queen's seal engraved into the wax. To my cute little boy, how are you celebrating Christmas this year? We're making a pudding. We found a lovely recipe. We're even getting the new butler William involved. He needs to relax, always so stiff and proper. I've decided to gift you with this lovely owl. We have no need for another owl in the palace. We already have so many. Consider Hedwig a gift. She was quite particular with her name, and wouldn't accept anything else. Have you found anything new? The families are quite worried. Over the winter break, I'd like for you to shut down one of the larger mafia dealings. They're currently the largest mafia family and deals in drugs. Here's the key to the warehouse. Good luck. So, do you like bacon? Seal asked, holding out a strip, which was immediately snatched up by the Snowy. I guess you do. Seal said dryly as the Snowy flew away towards the Olery. Well, I'm off. Books to read, magic to learn. Cases to investigate. Seal said, muttering the last part under his breath. Nothing added up, and Seal was sure that the guilty person was Professor Thanatos. That man drops off the face of the earth when he's not teaching, and only sat at the head table once according to Seamus, and that had been on the first day of school. Now all he needed was to find the location of the missing students and the identity of Thanatos, who was eerily familiar. Seal entered the library and ignored the death glare he was receiving from the librarian. That woman looked at everyone as if they were there to defile the rows of books. With a sigh, Seal headed to the back of the library and grabbed a book about curses and counter-curses. It would be nice to enter the restricted section, as it did hold hundreds of obscure books. It may even hold records that they wanted to keep hidden, but to access it you needed a slip of paper with a professor's signature on it. Yes, he would get a teacher's permission to enter, but what would be his excuse? Perhaps Professor Flitwick? He could just say he wanted more reading material. Believable enough, seeing as he did spend every morning in the library, not necessarily reading, but they didn't know that. Stretching his back with a yawn, Seal dusted himself off and walked towards the dormitories to grab his cloak. Maybe fresh air would help. His last walk had been nice. Breathing in the crisp winter air, Seal gave a slight smile. Perhaps this year was looking up much better than the last, although anything would beat last year. With that thought, his lips turned down. Seal tilted his head to the sky and looked at the clear blue. But as they say, there's always a calm before the storm. Finally, I was getting sick of that place. Home sweet home, Seal said as soon as he saw Phantom Hive Manor's gate. You live here? Seamus asked in shock. Yes, it's the ancestral home of the Phantom Hives. Potter Manor was burnt down during the war. I'll have to get that rebuilt later. Seal said blankly. You have more than one of these? How rich are you? Seamus asked, eyes wide. In France and a few others, I think. Seal said, ticking the properties off on his fingers. All right, Seamus said as they walked into the manor. As soon as Seal entered the doorway, he was tackled by a blonde and blue blur.
Hello, Luna.
Seal choked out.
Hello, Ciel.
I've been so bored without you. All Ginevra talks about is Harry Potter. Why, she doesn't even know your name, and she thinks she'll be your future wife. Of course she doesn't know about the betrothal. I didn't want to break it to her without someone taking pictures, that is. She makes the funniest faces when upset. Luna said with a sunny beam. Hey Sebastian. Who is she? Seamus asked. She is the young master's betrothed, Luna Elizabeth Midford Lovegood. Although more commonly known as Luna Lovegood. Sebastian replied calmly. Be betrothed? But they're 11. Is that even legal? Seamus questioned. It is a popular occurrence in the pureblood circles. Their marriage contract was made a century back. Every century a Phantom Hive and Midford would be wed to keep the family ties and loyalties strong. They of course require 2 heirs so as not to be too deeply inbred as the blacks are. Sebastian replied. Oh, and I made you this. Isn't it lovely? Luna asked as she handed Seal a butterbeer cork necklace. It was different than Luna's, where hers held multiple corks and had multicolored glass beads woven in. His held a single cork and was on a silver and blue thread, with tiny blue and green glass beads woven in. It's lovely, Luna. I will think of you when I wear it. Seal said honestly, the fact that it was handmade was lovely, and he would think of Luna when he wore it, as it wasn't large and clunky. It would also be incredibly rude to not wear something his fiancée made for him. It'll keep the nargles away. However, to keep the rackspurts out you need to wear radishes in your ears. But they wouldn't look that nice with your hair. I'll find you a substitute though. Luna said with another sunny beam. Seal placed the necklace around his neck and let Luna drag him off towards the sitting room. I'll show you to different rooms, and you'll be able to choose from the selection. Sebastian said as he led Seamus to the servant quarters. The young master had wanted to see if Seamus was a reincarnated Bardroy. Therefore, if Seamus felt a connection towards his old quarters, it would be a confirmation that Seamus was Bardroy, as there were several more luxurious bedrooms. So which room did he choose? Seal asked as Sebastian prepared him for bed. Bardroys, He said something about not taking advantage of your generous hospitality. Sebastian replied. And Luna? Seal asked, fingering the butterbeer cork. Your prime suspect, the head of Scotland Yard, will also be in attendance. I suppose we'll be attending then. Seal huffed, falling into the soft cushions. When Seal walked into the ball, he immediately walked to the side. No way in hell was he dancing. Young master, aren't you going to dance? Sebastian asked, a smirk playing on his lips. I would prefer to enjoy the other features if the ball, such as these lovely snack platters. Oh look, there's some lemonade. Seal said, trying to avoid the topic of dancing. Honestly, it's no wonder you're such a wallflower Bakken. Perhaps the pool room will be better for you. I've seen no sign of your target in the main ball. Sebastian murmured. You're probably right, well off we go. Seal said with a sigh. As the duo entered the room, Seal eyed the Dursleys with complete disdain. Why were they even here? They weren't extremely rich, although with the way they schmoozed it was possible they had the connections. A Earl Phantom Hive, a pleasure. One of the men whose name slipped Seal's mind at the moment said. You haven't attended any parties. I'm quite surprised you came. The host said cheerfully. I was ill and then I had boarding school. Oh, hello, Inspector. How's that case of yours going for you? Seal replied, taking the pool stick that was handed to him. Well enough that I don't see why Her Majesty decided that we need your assistance. The Chief Inspector of Scotland Yard sneered. Of course. Seal replied patronizingly, eyes glinting with amusement. Wait. He's the Earl of Phantom Hive? Vernon questioned. Problem? Seal asked. No, not all. I was just expecting someone older. From the tales I've heard. You're no older than Dudley here. Vernon said quickly, his face flushed, shoving his son towards Seal. Will you shoot Earl? One of the men asked. No, it's not my policy to shoot if I know I'll miss.
Ciel replied.
My parents died when I was young. When I went to take a blood test, the results were sent to the Queen, and I was informed of my position. Seal replied, watching as the suspect Vanel missed the cue ball and scowled. Really? Did you uncover any family secrets? One of them asked. Why, yes, I found out that my mother was adopted. After all, no one in her family had emerald eyes like that. They were pure Elizabeth Midford, and the auburn hair was from Angelina Durless. Seal said, watching Petunia stiffen and eyes grow wide in horror. Her eyes traveled up to his forehead, which he flicked his bangs to the side, showing the infamous lightning bolt scar. Was your name any different? Another asked as Seal once again passed his turn. Why, yes, it was. I had actually been going by Harry Potter. The Potter part was my father's last name, and the Harry was a variant for my middle name. Seal replied, watching gleefully as Vernon turned a pasty gray and Dudley's eyes widened in realization. Enough of this. If you want to interrogate the Earl, interrogate him later. Now, are you sure the warehouse key is safe with you? The Chief Inspector Randall asked. Of course, the rats will soon come looking for the forbidden cheese. Seal replied, watching as Vanel once again missed. How long will it take you? Randall asked. How soon can you secure the payment? Seal countered. You vulture. Randall growled. Be careful how you smear my family name. Seal said coldly, his words laced with venom. Oh, you're in trouble now. One of the men laughed. You'll have it by the end of tonight. Randall sighed. You passed your turn twice, and now you going for all of them. Vernon growled. Your greed will undo you. Another said. Seal shot the ball and watched as he hit his mark, and asked softly, Am I undone? Explain what, Vermin? Oh, I'm sorry, Vernon. Seal said with a smirk. I apologize, but the young master ought to be heading home now. He has several lessons and business deals to complete tomorrow. Also, should you attempt to harm my master again, I'll have to break your wrist and every bone in the offending hand. Have a good day, Mr. Vermin, Sebastian said before picking Seal up bridal style. Put me down. I am perfectly capable to walk on my own. Seal growled at his butler. Why, young master, you must be tired. And we have a busy day tomorrow. This is demeaning. Seal scowled as they approached the car. I'll go and prepare this afternoon's tea, Sebastian told Seal, who was doing paperwork. Seal gave a nod and let his head fall onto the desk. So much paperwork, he groaned. Lifting his head up, Seal's eyes widened as a cloth was placed over his nose and mouth. Chloroform. Seal thrashed a bit, knocking papers to the floor before collapsing. Young master, today we have a chocolate cream pie. Oh dear, it looks like the rats came, and what a mess they made. Sebastian sighed before he saw Seamus running towards him waving a letter. There was a letter at the door. It's addressed to the House of Phantom Hive. Seamus said before tripping, "The letter please." Sebastian said, noting that no bullets had been fired yet. "Right here." Seamus said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. "What a dreadfully written letter. Now Mr. Finnegan, should the manor fall under attack while I'm gone, use your magic. The house is warded against the ministry's trace. Now could you clean this up?" Sebastian said, handing Seamus the pie. "Wait, by clean it up, does that mean I can eat it, Mr. Sebastian?" Seamus asked, seeing the empty hall. "Now little Phantom Hive, tell me where the warehouse key is." Vanel said, one hand holding Seal's face roughly. "So I was right, it was you, and here I was hoping that something unexpected would happen. This game is no fun at all."
Ciel sigue d'ignoring Vanelle's question.
"Now no need to be rude. Just tell me where the key is and we can pretend this never happened. There are so few jobs available, and how else could I make money? Not murder, not smuggling, not women or organs, which leaves drugs, yes." Vanel asked. "You little brat. Negotiations are off, attack the manor." Vanel shouted into his cell phone. Seal gave a laugh at that. The manor had inbuilt defenses that would ward off muggles and unwanted guests. Once Seamus was able to protect himself and the manor, then he would have some of the wards taken done. "What's so funny, you little rat?" Vanel snarled. "It's highly unlikely you'll find the manor, and if you do, well, we'll see how far they get," Seal said with a smirk, tilting his head to the side. Vanel looked like he was about to kick Seal once more before his phone rung. "Hello? What do you mean something's following you? What are you, a bunch of pansies?" And then Seal heard Sebastian's voice on the other end. Woof! The phone fell from Vanel's hand, and he looked at Seal in fear before kicking him in the ribs. Then the shots rung out, causing Vanel to give a broad smile. He grabbed Seal from behind and dragged him away from the door, placing his pistol to the Bluinette's temple. Seal grinned inwardly as Vanel stiffened at the sound of footsteps. The door flew open and Vanel scoffed. "I was expecting more than just a dandy in a tailcoat." Vanel sneered. "I have come for the young master. I have the warehouse key right here," Sebastian said before several shots rang out.
Ciel choqued.
"Slightly, just to give a good show. I wasn't going against the self-proclaimed Lord of Games without a backup plan," Vanel said with a laugh. "Gun these days have so much more firepower," Sebastian said, coughing up several bullets. Men fell at the hands of his butler. "I thought it would make for a good game, young master," Sebastian replied. "St, stop right there or I'll blow his brains out," Vanel shouted. "Will you hurry it up? My leg's fallen asleep and he smells revolting." Seal scowled, wrinkling his nose. "But young master, if I step any closer he'll blow your brains out." "Now ask like how I taught you," Sebastian said. "Say shut up," Vanel shouted, eyes wide.
Ciel commanded.
"Shut up," Vanel screamed, pulling the trigger only to see Seal look at him, both eyes bright. "Sebastian?" Seal asked, head tilted to the side, the purple contract. Seal glowing in the dim lighting. "Merry Christmas, Seal," Luna said, giving the Earl a bear hug. "Oh hello Luna, I thought you weren't coming until later," Seal said. "Daddy said it was okay to come early. Here, I got you this," Luna said, shoving a small silver box into his hands. "You didn't have to, Luna," Seal mumbled, giving Luna a box as well. "I know, but knowing you, you'd have a gift for me." "Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I need gifts, silly." "Well, open it." Seal opened the box and saw a silver charm bracelet with a radish charm inside. "You already have a necklace, but it doesn't keep the rackspurts out of your brain," Luna told him before unwrapping her own gift. A fencing sword that Seal had found while searching the Phantom Hive vault. I take it you've begun to remember," Luna said with a slight smile. "What do you mean?" Seal asked. "Initial explosion, probably shattering other vials. The smoke caused me to remember things that had never happened to me. Reoccurring figures were a girl with blonde ringlets named Elizabeth, her mother, her father, her brother Edward, her fiancé Seal Phantom Hive, and his butler Sebastian Michaelis." Luna said, eyes flicking to said duo. Seamus looked up in surprise. "Yes, I know reincarnation. Oh hello Bardroy, have you seen Finny or Mirren yet? Anyways, as I was saying, that doesn't explain the fact that you once again have only one eye." Luna said, I can understand how you're still a Phantom Hive, but I don't get how Sebastian is still a Michaelis considering that your namesake's butler fell off the map right after you died. Luna said with narrowed eyes, can we have this confrontation without others in the room, or on another day? I promise to explain this all to you before I return to Hogwarts.
Ciel squeaked.